Hey, everybody. Hi. Welcome to the program. That program is The Jeff Gerstmann Show. And I'm your host for this week's installment. My name is Jeff Gerstmann. Sagittarius. No, I'm not even Sagittarius. Sagittarius is just the funny one to say, I think. If you've got to invoke a zodiac sign, Sagittarius just seems like the silliest one to that's the go-to, I think. What's the funniest sign of the zodiac? Sagittarius. I don't know. That's my take on it. I could be wrong. Let's break it down. 3 hours of discussion. Hey there. Yeah, no, that's Cluter31 says, I hate having to answer that with saying, hi, I'm a Cancer. Yeah. The CM Punk of zodiac signs. How's everybody doing? We are in the middle of April. Your taxes are apparently due today. Getting down to the wire here. Waiting to hear back from I was talking about it yesterday. Had to go with an accountant first time this time, and haven't heard back. I'm waiting for here's the button, like here's what you do to give the money that you're going to owe, I guess. I'm waiting to, I have a rough idea, a rough guesstimate of what the numbers are going to be, and I don't like them very much, but hey, good problems to have, I suppose. Yeah, Steel Knight says, as somebody who does people's taxes, don't send it in last minute. Yeah, it turns out when you go through this whole process of like starting a corporation and launching a corporation, and there's a lot of paperwork, and then you give all that to an accountant and they say, you didn't do any of this correctly. And I'm like, I did what the website told me to do. And so, well, there's your problem. So here we are. I am just about, I guess, I don't know. I have until midnight tonight for them to send me a thing that I then will punch in payment information. I don't even know how it's going to work. We'll figure it out. Yeah, no, on the Discord, people saying, fuck taxes, don't pay your taxes. Yeah, man, don't pay your taxes. I'm a sovereign citizen. But I don't know how that's going to go. So that's been taking up a lot of mind, a lot of brain power over here on this end, kind of getting all of that together, getting all of it's weird, you go from being an employee to being on your own to starting a corporation, and then you got to figure out like, okay, do I have to pay myself? How do I how does any of that work? And I don't know. There's a whole process for all of that stuff. At some point, I'm going to pay myself, which I should do because I have not paid myself in, I guess almost a year now. Anyway, things are going well around these parts. We had it the last week is just everyone's been sick and then just lingering kind of head cold type stuff, and everyone's good now, but there's just a couple of days that my daughter wasn't feeling good, and then my wife wasn't feeling good, and then me and my son, we pretty much were fine the entire time. And for the most part, yeah, I don't know. It's just this lingering weird, just head cold kind of stomach bug, just weird stuff going around. But yeah, so it's just been keeping a close eye on the kids, making sure that they're getting better, not getting sick, and everything else. And it's just been a hectic week on the home front. But yeah, I don't know. I've been getting some games in. There's a bunch of stuff out today that I haven't tried that we will get to this week. Like I know Minecraft Legends is out today, and I am interested in giving that a look. I don't know. Like I remember seeing footage of it back, well, I guess a little bit technically before they had announced it, but and thinking this is an intriguing concept, but I'm not necessarily sure if it's like, my kind of game. But like looking at it, like, I at least want to I at least want to give that a look. And then yes, Disney Speedstorm is out today. And I don't really care about it. It's like a free to play kart racer, right? Is it still free to play, or is that just a far? I don't know. Anyway, I know it is out in some kind of form today with multiple packages that you can pay money for or whatever. But the thing there is the soundtrack. The soundtrack seemed really good. And so I'm very kind of curious to see how that holds up. Now they ran a beta of that a long time ago, but yeah, I remember playing it then, and then it's out in some kind of form now. Okay, yeah, so you can pay to access it now because it's technically early access, but it will eventually be free to play when it comes out. Okay, thank you, Bryn. Yeah, weird. That's a weird. Yeah, if you pay money now, we'll let you play it now. The game is not done yet, so you're kind of doing us a favor by playing it and hammering out the last of the bugs, but you will pay for the opportunity to do so. It's the incentives are stacked all wrong in video games these days. But you don't need me to tell you that. I don't know. It's kind of a weird one, but I don't know. I've been playing a handful of things, kind of waiting for some other stuff to come in. I've not tried X Defiant yet. I don't know if that is. I guess that's still technically a closed beta, but you may have seen footage of people out there playing that. I haven't had time to really mess with that at all, but I will say, based on it's a weird kind of inverse level of excitement where the people who seem most excited for X Defiant are the same people who are like angry about skill-based matchmaking and the movement options in the current Call of Duty. They're like, oh, they took out all the weird, goofy movement stuff you can do. How dare they? And those people are the ones that seem most excited about X Defiant. And then you see footage of it, people doing like just shitty, skittery bullshit movement. And I just look at it and go like, and they seem very excited about it in a way that makes me think, I don't know, if X Defiant is the game where they're trying to attract that crowd, they can have them. So I don't know. We'll kind of see how that kind of comes together. I'm not sure, but that's been looking at the footage and looking at some of the other the ways people are talking about that game. It was just like, ugh, yeah, exactly. No, Sir 5000 right. You see clips on TikTok of people like, here's the game that's gonna save first person shooters, and then it's just a first person shooter that looks vaguely Call of Duty-esque, except everyone is doing this skittery bullshit motion stuff that you just look at and go like, well, this is a mess. Who the fuck wants to do this? And apparently it is a certain subset of fucking Call of Duty weirdos that they're like, I can't believe they took this out of Call of Duty to make it playable for the masses. How dare they? So I don't know. We'll see how that comes together. I am curious about it. Like, there are aspects of it that sounded interesting, but yeah, we'll see. Yeah, the kids just don't know they want to play Quake. Like, just play Quake. Let's just play Quake. You want a fast, like skittery movement kind of game. Quake 1 is the game. Quake 1 is an amazing video game. It is still a fantastic shooter. Just get into that instead, right? Let's see. So what have I been playing? I have played some Tron Identity. I haven't quite finished it, but I have kind of made my way through some chunk of Tron Identity. If you're not familiar, this is Bithell Games, the visual novel set in the Tron universe. You're kind of a detective investigating a mystery, and it's a visual novel, so it's it is not super animation heavy. It is static images for the most part, with text or, light movement, light animation with, text at the bottom, and you're making some occasional choose your own adventure style choices about dialogue and all of that sort of stuff. I'm probably going to play through the rest of it. I just don't know if I'm having a great time with it. I am not exactly the most visual novel friendly person. We talked about this last week when we were streaming the game, but it's the story itself is okay, but it's not, I guess it's not really pulling me in super deeply. It seems well made, but at the same time, I don't know. There's a kind of you occasionally defrag another program's identity disk, and there's a kind of puzzle game that goes along with that has rules similar to Uno, where you're matching suits or you're matching numbers, but it's limited on how you can move and blah blah blah, and that is kind of the quote unquote video game part of it. You're doing visual novel dialogue things and piecing together the mystery, and then you're occasionally doing this so that a program can remember, oh right, thank you for doing that. Now I remember this happened, and that aspect of the game I don't really enjoy, and so you can skip those parts of the game if you want and just kind of stick to the dialogue choices and whatnot. And that's welcome, but at the same time, it's man, this is there's kind of two things in this game, and one of them is not really doing it for me at all, and the other one is kind of just okay. But I think I think that Tron fiction outside of the core films, which you could obviously levy a bunch of, there are issues with the Tron movies. Let's not try to pretend that they're perfect or whatever. But I feel like the majority of Tron things that exist outside of the films have been not great. I don't know. Some people really like the Disney XD cartoon, which I have not watched much of. I kind of read up on it a little bit and looked at the art style and was I don't think I like the way this looks that much. And so I feel like this very weirdly tortured fan of Tron, where I'm I love Tron, but I don't know that I'd love anything that has happened with Tron in an extremely long time. Buying the comic books and some of the other stuff that came along. Tron Evolution, that old Tron 2.0 game that people try to pretend was a great video game. Which it was an okay first-person shooter, but that story was not awesome either. I don't know, no one ever remembers the part where it's you play as Jet and you're Tron, the son of this guy, and you get sucked into the computer. The story in Tron 2.0 is not awesome. But they went for it with that game, at least. They tried to kind of, here's your light cycle this and here's that, and they tried to make it happen. The execution on that, I feel like they really kind of biffed it in some key ways. So Tron Identity, I feel kind of fits right into that pantheon, right, of things where you're just yeah, I'm trying to, it's this weird thing where maybe the Tron in my head is way better than any of the other Tron out there. I'm not really sure. But yeah, I feel I'm a duty bound to finish Tron Identity. It's a few hours long, and so I'm making my way through it. There's probably not that much left, to be honest. But yeah, it's a thing that I look at, and when I try to remove that aspect, I look at it and go this is well made. This is a really well made thing. The production values and music, there's nice stuff here, but it's not coming together for me the way that I hoped that it would. They're working on another Tron game from the sounds of it. That will be not another one of these. It'll be something different, something maybe a little larger in scope from the sounds of things. I'm not really sure. And so I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about that. But yeah, I don't know. This is just a weird. What is the ideal Tron video game? I'm not really sure. I don't really know anymore. Maybe I never did. The arcade game. Maybe it's far enough removed where it's just like, it's light cycles. You remember the tanks? You can do the tank thing. There's spiders, you better shoot them. And yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Maybe it's a pinball machine. That Tron pinball machine was pretty good. Pinball Effects has made its way to Steam. You may remember this game is, let's say it's about a year old now, as a game that, debuted on the Epic Game Store and has now made its way to Steam. There's a lot of tables in here, and if you have never purchased any other Pinball Effects thing, you will kind of be spared the worst thing about it, and that's that they decided not to honor people's DLC purchases from the previous entries in the Pinball Effects franchise. And so you have to rebuy tables that you may have already owned. They're also selling a subscription now to all the tables, but not all the tables, because some of the licensed ones like Indiana Jones and those don't come with the subscription. And so it's like they launched it with something like $400 worth of DLC. And that's a lot for a lot of, honestly, really terrible pinball tables. Like there's the Marvel ones, there's Star Wars ones, there's some originals that they made themselves. There's a Garfield table. There's a Borderlands table in there now. They have some real ones from Williams that they licensed, and so those tables are great, at least. And then there's all this other stuff that is like they went and got IPs and they went and did it, and that stuff is... I think those table designs are... A lot of them are very bad, like borderline abysmal designs. Like, just like this, who made... Like, this is a terrible table design. There's no fun. The audio design across the board on their custom tables, I think, has always been really terrible, and they just never got better with that. You know, when you're playing pinball, you're playing pinball. You don't always have time to look up at the back glass to see what's going on, and they're just terrible about having meaningful audio cues that let you know what's happening on the table. It's terrible. It's terrible. And I don't like the physics in those games either. So even though they do have the Williams tables in there now, I prefer what Farsight did with Pinball Arcade in terms of their physics and their stuff. I think that they did a better job with it back then. It's a shame the way that these pinball licenses have shaken out, that there's just no like one good solution. Let me rephrase that. One good legal solution for that, because none of the physics options or anything in Pinball Effects feel correct or good. It's a shame. I love digital pinball, and there's really just no... Pinball Arcade felt like it was on the right track for a good long time, and then the licenses got ripped out from underneath them, and they hit their own weird wall too, where they had two versions of the... Like, they started working on like a DX11 version, and that all got all fucked up, and or they never fully made the transition there because they lost all the licenses, and the whole thing just kind of went to shit. And it's a shame across the board that all of that stuff just kind of happened. I don't know. Visual Pin Mame, you could be a baller installer someday. I don't know. There's a lot of other options out there if you're willing to cross some weird lines that don't involve either of those products, and that stuff's kind of interesting if you're at all out there around the edges. The new season of Call of Duty launched, and it's 2 more maps. It's just like, here's some more stuff. It really feels like that they are kind of spinning their wheels with the updates to Call of Duty, and I wonder if that's like, think about it, like the current state of Call of Duty. It's such a large game with so many different moving parts. There's so many different modes that they have to put a little bit of support into each mode every time they update it. And so if you don't play every mode and don't see every update, every bit of every season, then it's going to feel a little more slight. And so with me, as someone who's mostly just playing the competitive multiplayer, and I'm not really touching Warzone that much anymore, and haven't really played DMZ in a season and a half or so, it's 2 more maps, and one of them's kind of messed up. Like there's a night vision map, and it's a cool idea that kind of doesn't really work great. People are up in arms with the DMZ mode because some of the skins they're selling will come with items for DMZ mode. And it's really kind of time savers more than it is like people are like, they got these pay to win skins. It's like, well, think of it as instead of as well, whatever. Yeah, sure, fine. Call it what you want to. It's shitty that they are providing gameplay benefits at all, I guess. But at the same time, it's like this if you have this skin, then when you go into DMZ mode, you will have a 2-plate armor vest instead of a 1-plate armor vest, which is an advantage. But also, if you're playing DMZ enough, you're probably going to have those sorts of items anyway, unless you go out there and die, in which case you go out there and you get those items and extract so that you can start with them next time, and so on and so forth. So it's really, they're kind of time savers. It's like there's sort of a ramp up to getting your gear together in DMZ, and you can pay to remove part of that ramp. And I think that's kind of crummy. But it's not like you're going to like buy that skin and then win games or whatever. If you're unfamiliar, DMZ mode is, well, gosh, I'm not even playing it that much anymore, but it is, they are taking elements of the Warzone map and kind of turning it into a smaller area where you kind of jump in and fight against AI-based enemies. It has been likened to Escape from Tarkov in some ways, because if you die, you lose all your gear and it's all gone. And so you have to kind of be careful as to what you bring in and, try to make sure that you extract to take your stuff out. And so that gives the game stakes that it certainly doesn't have in any other mode, which is interesting. But I always, the AI, the way the AI plays and shoots back, the way the AI shoots back at you, really, if they didn't have guns, this would be way more fun. No, the AI can be pretty stiff. And also there are other players in there. So there are cases where it's like, hey, there's one boss on this map that has a weapon case and you want to get that weapon and get out with it. That'd be a nice thing to do, because then you would unlock that weapon in a permanent way for yourself. But all the other players might be trying to do that as well. And so there's a lot of like good, exciting fuckery. But I think I am at a point with it where I mostly enjoy watching other people do that. And I've seen so much of other people doing it that I'm not really seeing anything new. When you see clips going around TikTok and whatever else of people playing DMZ, it's always the same. Like, I parachuted onto the edge of this helicopter and then I jumped up and killed them all at the last second, and that was very funny, or whatever, right? Like, there you see tense moments happening. You see people doing silly stuff on proximity voice chat and whatever else, and that stuff's fun as well. But yeah, I've definitely gotten more out of DMZ mode in watching it than I have in playing it. And they've made updates to it over time and added kind of additional little, like, oh, you got this key card and now you can go off to this other area and do this other thing. And it's I don't know, like when I play Call of Duty, I do it in a very laid back way, and competitive multiplayer is really good for me for that. It's just like, fuck it, I'm gonna just, end of the night, shoot some fools and then go to sleep and whatever. Or play Warzone, and that's a little bit more intense because it's got that kind of horror movie aspect to it of, that battle royales tend to have. DMZ's neat, it just doesn't really fit into, it doesn't fit into my life right now. And so yeah, so that's that mode. I don't know. They've continued to make additions across the board. It's just like I said, it feels like they're kind of treading water a little bit on that stuff, and it hasn't been like when that game first came out. I got to the level cap in the first season. I played as much of that game as you could play, it seemed like. And then with the subsequent seasons, like the stuff they've added, the new maps, they just haven't been great. also I'm getting tired of the old maps too. And so whatever, we're into season 3 and it's already April and they'll have more to sell in 6 months, right? So we're about halfway through the cycle. I guess it makes sense that they're moving on to the next thing, and that's where they're putting their best efforts. And this is just kind of gonna get its live game updates. And this week it's getting a Weed Man because it's Weed Man Week. Happy Weed Man Week to those who celebrate, I suppose. I got the most embarrassing press release last week that was like, if you're working on a 420 feature, we're putting out video games. And like none of the video games were about weed. It was like this real, like, it was a real stretch to kind of like tie this into the weed day and just be like, yeah, man, we've got this game. You can play it with your buds. Buds? Like that was as far as they got with it. It was just like, fucking, what are you doing? Why am I receiving this in the email form? It literally opened with "Hi Jeff" and they spelled "Hi" H-I-G-H. I just like. And so I think we've come around again now that weed is legal in swaths of this nation of ours. That there's nothing, and you could argue that this has always been the case, but I think that now that we're seeing corporations kind of glom onto it, and this is not new to this year, obviously this has been going on for a long time, but there's nothing cool about weed. I would say, as someone who is not interested in it to begin with, that there never was. But at the same time, it is like they have found a way to do kids want to get weed? I'm sure they probably do. But at the same time, if you're looking at this stuff and all the billboards for like, you can get weed delivered to your house now, and like all of the things that make all of the kind of like corporate weed things that are everywhere all the time, they have found a way to they have found a way to make it just seem like the least cool thing in the world. Just like the dumbest shit. It's just like, look at this, like, oh, you're into this, really? But whatever, I don't know. I guess you still see whatever. It's still illegal in a lot of places, and so I think there are probably, again, large swaths of this great nation that are still very much like, I'm gonna hit the vape, man. Like, hand me my blinker and all that other stupid shit. So congratulations to, I don't know, the feds. I don't know, like whoever made this, the state level, whatever, they've found a way to make weed being extremely uncool. Extremely uncool. I don't know. And the last game I've been playing is not actually out quite yet. It is out on the 20th, but nothing about it seems to be tied into Weed Day. Oh, but so anyway, but Call of Duty has a Weed Man skin that I think it shoots weed. I think you shoot weed at people, and then when they die, weed comes out, and then he's wearing a gas mask because weed. I imagine the gas mask is full of weed. I don't know. Back, when Ween was putting images on the front of album covers of them wearing gas masks, they tried to imply that they were using that gas mask to huff Scotch Guard, which you shouldn't do. But that's got some danger to it. Like, you hear that and go like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, what? You're huffing Scotch Guard out of a gas mask? Don't fucking do that. But at the same time, if it leads to you putting out the pod, then I guess I can't completely argue with whatever it is you're doing. And then I think they later tried to say, like, no, that's a joke. We would never huff Scotch Guard out of a gas mask. Don't do that. And I don't know if I believe them. Dean and Gene Ween. Filthy dopers, if you ask me. Anyway. Where is the Scotch Guard bong man in Call of Duty? That's what I want to know. Where is the Scotch Guard gas mask? A Boognish charm that hangs off the side of your gun? Can we get... No, I wonder what the fuck am I talking about? Yes, more lean skins while we're at it. I've got an AR-15 and then on the side of it, it just says perk 30. Let's lean into this. Let's go all the way with this. Enough with the weed talk. Let's, if you want your video game skins to be edgy, then sell me like, oh, hey, everyone likes playing as this pretty lady in Call of Duty for whatever reason. Here's one where she's been on Crocodile for 8 months. Let's do that. Let's get fucking real. Yes, you're shooting rainbow fentanyl at your foes. The other game I've been playing is a game called Mr. Sun's Hatbox, and this is coming out later this week. And it is, I guess I would, it's a combat platformer in that, there are enemies that you are jumping on top of their head and they are trying to jump on top of your head. And there are hats you can wear to prevent that, like a spiked helmet that will make it so that they take damage when they jump on your head and all of those sorts of things. And this is a 2D side-scrolling game. You are jumping around and hopping on guys like a play. You are also using the right stick to aim weapons in some cases, and you can have melee weapons and other things that you can pick up. And it they have duplicated large parts of the functionality of Metal Gear Solid: The Phantom Pain in a 2D side-scrolling cute platformer game. And what I mean by that is that you can Fulton guys out. You can attach balloons to items and people and steal them. And that Fultons them back to your base. And then once you've done that, you have to deprogram them to get them to join your side. And so you have to put them in the brig for 2 days of game time so that they then join your team. And every single character has their own kind of buffs and debuffs. So you'll have enemies. It's sort of a rogue legacy sort of deal where they'll have traits like this guy has loud footsteps, and so he's way worse at stealth. This guy smells bad, and so he's way worse at stealth. This guy can't see well, so there's a darkness kind of vision situation happening. This guy can't aim the weapon up or down. He can only aim to the side. And so you kind of have to figure out who you want to bring into a mission. If you want to take some of the hats or weapons that you have in storage with you out into the field and potentially lose them out there. And then out there in the field, you will conduct different missions. Some of them are just wipe out everyone who's here, to raid, kill everybody. Some of them are you need to kidnap a very specific individual, and you can Fulton them with the balloon, or you can knock them out, pick them up, and carry them out of the level. And it's really fucking cool. Because between missions in Mr. Sun's Hatbox, you are going back to a base it's almost like an XCOM looking facility where you're building additional rooms, and as you build rooms around the map, you're building a research center where you can research things like, I need more balloons so that I can steal more shit. Or, that's the only one I've researched, I think, so far. But you need to assign research staff to the research facility. If guys get injured when they're out in the field, you can put them in the med bay and heal them up. There's a black market that you eventually unlock. And so it's this very simple looking concept of these cutesy little ball-bodied dudes that are just trying to get your package back. Trying to, Mr. Sun just wants his Hatbox. Mr. Moon stole Mr. Sun's Hatbox. And you're the delivery guy trying to get it back. And the way you do it is by creating this entire operation of espionage and subterfuge as you are going on these raids and getting custom hats and there you get a propeller hat so you can fly a little bit. And there's just a fun, crazy variety to it. And then it has these kind of Metal Gear-esque trappings around the edges of it when you steal things, you can attach balloons to them and have them float away. Really, it's the Fultoning. There's a cardboard box in the game. You can find one and equip it and use that for stealth as well. And it's real silly. And it seems like it's got a level of depth to it that like feels like, okay, the right way to go with this joke is to take it as far as we possibly can. And yeah, so like, yeah, you go look at the Steam page for it and it's like, okay, like it looks like it's hard to get a sense exactly of all of that depth from some of the stuff that they are showing on the Steam page, but it's fascinating. It can also be very frenetic. Like, when things go bad, you just find yourself jumping up and down and hopping on guys and all of this other crazy shit and killing them. And you can pick them up and break their necks if you so desire. If they're knocked out and you're like, we're whatever, this guy's not going to come with us. We're out of balloons. We're not going to Fulton this guy out. So let's make sure he doesn't wake up. You should give it a look. I'll probably check it out later this week and stream some of it if you want to see it. And it's neat. It's definitely neat. So yeah, that was a fun one to play. That is out Thursday on Steam. It's not out quite yet, but give that a look. Maybe throw it on your wish list or something. And yeah, it seems pretty fun. We're going to take a break here, and then after that, we'll get into the news. Right? Yes. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we will be right back. Science has proven it. Cold sleep is better sleep. Temperature-controlled sleep repairs muscle and improves cognitive function, so you always start your day feeling sharp, confident, and energized. And that is where Sleep Me comes in. Sleep Me is the new home for Chili Sleep. They're bringing the same great sleep that Chili Sleep offered, but under a new name. Now, Sleep Me makes the coldest sleep systems available. These are the coldest sleep systems available. They create the environment that meets the body's natural need for lower core temperatures, promoting deeper restorative sleep. These sleep systems are water-based, temperature-controlled mattress pads. They fit over your existing mattress to provide your ideal sleep environment, keeping your bed at the perfect temperature for deep, cold sleep. And they just launched the Dock Pro sleep system with new Hyper AI. You can experience ultimate cooling power with the Dock Pro sleep system. Pair it with the new Sleep Me app and get real-time temperature adjustments based on your current sleep activity from the new Hyper AI technology. It is the industry's first sleep tech that tracks and optimizes your sleep temperature for you in real time. That's right. Get the best sleep of your life with AI-driven technology. Staying asleep is important. It turns out. You want to try to catch a solid block of sleep and not be waking up over and over again. And it's something with young kids in the house. That's just been a reality of it. And let me tell you, on the other end of that, waking up, changing diapers, getting the milk bottle, all that other stuff. On the other end of this coin, the part where you're not getting great sleep, let me tell you, you want to get the great sleep. You want to get the cold sleep. You want to get Sleep Me. Head over to sleep.me/Jeff to learn more and save 20% off the purchase of any new Dock Pro, Uller, or Cube sleep system. This offer is available exclusively for you, the listeners to this right now, and only for a limited time. That's sleep.me/Jeff sleep.me/Jeff to take advantage of this exclusive discount and wake up refreshed every day. Okay, we're back. We're almost done with these GFUELs that the GFUEL Corporation sent over weeks and weeks ago. We've been chewing through them, some different flavors here. A lot of these GFUELs have been real bad. This one I have high hopes for. It is Divine Peach. I feel like listing a flavor right on the can can only be a good thing. And then I don't know, there's an M here. I don't know what the M means. I don't know if you can even see the M. This is not a good I don't have autofocus, so this is not going to be a good way to see this. And it's got some anime looking dude on. Oh, not really anime. I don't know. It's got some dude on it. I don't know. Is that guy associated with Peach? Who knows? I've got high hopes that this will at least taste like it's Divine Peach. I mean, at least my biggest problem with a lot of the GFUEL flavors we've had lately have been that they just are this like generic sludge of like some random flavor. You know, that's like, it's just kind of this vague fruit thing. And that hasn't been great. So I'm going to pull the list up here. We're going to just crack this open and find out. Smells like peach. This is already pretty exciting. This is, because like, what are the other ones? Like GFUEL Pink Drip. And I like some silly names for things, and I don't think they all have to be like perfectly evocative of the flavor or whatever. But I think with the way some of these GFUELs have been going, it's been, like, what does Tetris taste like really? Even though also in some cases radioactive lemonade was not a good lemon thing, and then Compound V, which we drank most recently, is miserable. It's a miserable beverage. This smells like peach, and so that is a world ahead of everything. The man is Easy Bees says the man is Twitch streamer Moist Critical. Moist Critical. Okay. I don't know. Okay. Sure. Okay. This tastes like peach. This just tastes this tastes like peach. There's no I'm not getting like a bad chemically back end on it the way some of the other GFUELs have had. It tastes less sweet. Like, if you were to go get some like canned cling peaches and just drink the juice out of it, that'd be a little too sweet. So this tastes like, more subdued compared to that. I mean, I love drinking just peach juice, but honestly, it's just so thick and syrupy and sugary, and as you're drinking it, you're like, this can't be good. I like fruit, but hey, come on. Yeah, exactly. I could drink a Divine Peach for hours. This is good. Man. I'm so happy. There's been so many terrible drinks lately. I discovered that there's one more type of cult and one more Faxicandi booster in that box behind me in the energy drink box back here. There's some really disastrous stuff in there that we'll have to get to. But this is nice. This is a really good, mild peach flavor. And I'm honestly, I'm thrilled about it. I feel like lately, with the way some of this stuff has been going, I've been like bracing myself, like cracking it open, like, all right, time to drink more weird poison on the internet. It's nice when the poison tastes good, though. It's nice. This is better than the Sonic the Hedgehog peach rings. This is a better representation, which is funny because that's also a G Fuel. Watch, they'll come back and be like, hey, those two things are actually identical. And I'll be like, oh, no. But this seems... The peach rings, I remember feeling like a little sweeter and a little off. Whereas this... this seems fine. Let's throw it on the list. This is, I would drink more of these. I would drink more of the Divine Peach. I would drink more of this. This is better than Snow Cone. I'm going to say this is better than G Fuel Sour Cherry. Not as good as Rockstar Recovery Lemonade. Not as good as Grizzly Energy Orange Mango. And TMGS is a really good... I really like the TMGS. So I think where we're at here is right at number 14. G Fuel Divine Peach. Congratulations to Moist Critical. Is that the name? This hair guy? This guy? Does he do? Is he? Is he? Okay. Well, great. Nice when this works out. Yeah, that's a quality beverage. That's that's great because man, it's been a rough road lately. We've been really spending a lot of time down here at the bottom of the list where, if you're just listening to the audio version, we've got stuff down here like the G Fuel Tetris Blast, Cult Sugar Free. Some of these Danish drinks are truly abysmal, but also Bang Purple Guava Pear and a couple other G Fuel flavors and a bunch of Bang. Of course, Rockstar X Durance Marshmallow is just a rancid product. It's a time bomb. It's Ruby Soho. It's disgusting. Yeah, so I don't know. Congratulations to to Divine Peach, because that's quite drinkable. Anyway, let's move on. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit about the news here. Sega is in the news. The folks from Service Games are back in the headlines. They are acquiring the maker of Angry Birds, Rovio, for $775 million. That's a lot of money. You can get like you can get a lot for $775 million, I think. This is an all cash deal. This is Rovio makes Angry Birds, and so obviously Angry Birds has been huge. They have they made a movie, right? There was an Angry Birds film, right? And they, they've obviously I feel like they were most recently in the news because they were taking the original Angry Birds offline because it was interfering with the search results for the other more microtransaction heavy Angry Birds games that they would much rather you purchase. But yes, this TechCrunch article, there's all sorts of Angry Birds merchandise, plush dolls, like they broke out in a big way. Television show, cookbooks, according to this. They went public back in 2017, and yes, now they are going to be part of Sega. Back in January, an Israeli mobile gaming company called Playtika had originally tried to bid $810 million for Rovio, but that deal fell apart last month. And so Sega has stepped in, and now Sega is putting a 63% premium on Rovio's closing price to kind of make it a deal. Yeah, someone had said like, hey, this is actually a fraction of what Rovio was probably worth some number of years ago, which, yeah, right. I mean, like, that's kind of the weird thing about this is, what is Rovio anymore? I don't mean that in like a crummy way. But I don't know. Rovio seems like one of those companies that they made Angry Birds and then have tried to do other stuff. And they're like, oh, wait, no, Angry Birds is the thing. We've got to keep trying to find ways to make Angry Birds and trying to hold on to this for as long as we can. And, that's kind of it. And hey, compared to a lot of other mobile companies, that's a lot. If you could say, hey, well, we got Angry Birds, that's more than a lot of other companies out there. So I'll give them the credit for that. But at the same time, what are they gonna, it's not like Rovio is gonna get access to the Sega IP and then it's gonna immediately turn into something. It's not like they're gonna guaranteed to make the next Angry Birds, right? There's no guarantee that the next thing that Rovio makes is going to be even a fraction as big as Angry Birds. They could make fucking Sonic Chow Garden, but you are shooting the chow at pigs from slingshots, and it probably still would not do as well. They could put Billy Hatcher into Angry Birds, and that would not move the needle one way or the other. There's just a lot of... Yeah, so I guess, for the money, I'm sure that at some point that's like, hey, we know that Angry Birds is going to be bringing in some chunk of money for the foreseeable future, and, we'll make this work, and it'll give us at least the ability to have a firmer foothold in the mobile market, which, Sega probably desires, because everyone seems to be... There's a weird undercurrent of that happening again. And I guess to a certain extent, it never went away. But like, think about the Microsoft Activision merger. Like, one of the things that Microsoft is trying to lean on when they're defending the deal is like, well, we've got to get into mobile in a bigger way. And this gives us King, which controls the thing that they do. Man, completely just cannot remember the name of that game. Party Clash Zap. Party Clash Zap? Party Clash : Zap. Is that the thing they make? Clash of Candy Crush. That's the... God damn it, man. That they were like, hey, now we'll own Candy Crush, and we have to have a firmer foothold in the mobile games market. But that's a similar situation where, like, what does King have other than Candy Crush? Not again, Candy Crush is very big. I'm not saying like, oh, well, just fucking Candy Crush, but there's no guarantee that King Games is going to have one more thing out next that's going to be as big or bigger or anything like that. And so mobile is just this weirdly, it seems like it's always been this very fickle market. But at the same time, mobile has proven that the big games stay big. And so Candy Crush is still making a ton of money. Angry Birds, I'm sure, is still bringing in a ton of money. And so what Sega is doing is buying they're buying that money, and then there'll be 9 more flavors of Candy Crush out of King. and then 5 more. And this one is Angry Bird. They've done so many different variants of Angry Birds that have been like, and I'm sure that they will do Angry Birds fucking Sonic the Hedgehog edition. You're shooting flickies at Robotnik, and you gotta hit all these fucking Sonic, like they'll do it, right? Why wouldn't they make a Sonic the Hedgehog themed Angry Birds game? But like, again, just it doesn't really seem like there's any guarantee to the like long-term success, I guess is what I mean. Like the Angry Birds train continues to run, and that, yes, if you can spend money to buy that money and then continue to rely on that money for some chunk of time, then sure. But it's you don't, it's hard to look at this and go like, oh well, yeah, obviously their next game will be another huge hit and so on. So the TechCrunch article has some quotes from Sega and Rovio, I guess, on there. I guess actually it's mostly Sega from the press release. TechCrunch says, with Rovio under its wing, Sega says it plans to accelerate the development of its own existing games, as well as generate synergies between Sega and Rovio's brands. Specifically, it seems that Rovio's experience in so-called live service mobile gaming is what appealed to Sega, which refers to games designed to be played more or less indefinitely through regular content updates to keep players interested. Yeah. Moreover, Sega said that Rovio's expertise can help expand Sega's current and new games in more markets, particularly in Europe and North America. So yeah, I guess like Sega's mobile efforts haven't really always been targeted at the West, right? Like they've, I'm sure there's like 9 more gotcha games. Like what was the thing that there was just the hey, now we've got an anime lady that is designed to look like the Space Harrier stuff, but that was part of a kind of crossover of multiple things, because there was also a anime lady version of Mappy, which speaks to a real specific thing for me. I don't know. If they could get Mr. Do involved, then maybe we would have something. But yeah, so if Sega's mobile efforts have been largely targeted at Japan, at the Asian market, then picking up Rovio gives them a more worldwide presence on the kind of mobile front, and that's not the worst. Like you look at this and it seems like a lot of money to pay for a company that has had one hit, but then you remember the way mobile hits, like true fucking top tier mobile hits are, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, Angry Birds will probably make money for another 4 or 5 years minimum, right? It'll probably still be doing just fine. Because what's going to replace it? These things get such momentum, and it's it's just hard to go away. Sega also said, according to TechCrunch here, that it will use its cross-platform expertise to enable Rovio to expand beyond mobile gaming, which presumably means to consoles and or web browsers. That's their speculation there. But sure. Yeah, I don't know. What about Angry Birds Connect? I mean, we've been there. We've done this, right? And so the quote here is, among the rapidly growing global gaming market, the mobile gaming market has especially high potential, and it has been Sega's long-term goal to accelerate its expansion in this field. I am confident, this is Haruki Satomi, the president and group CEO of Sega Sammy Holdings. I am confident that through combination of both companies' brands, characters, fan base, as well as corporate culture and functionality, there will be significant synergies created going forward. We love a good synergy around here. If you're not synergizing, you're dying. That's what I say. Much like when, it's in the, not to sidetrack too far here, but when we get into the world of wrestling, there's a lot of hand-wringing happening right now around the sale of the WWE to a company called Endeavor, which owns UFC. And there was a lot of headlines today, even of people going like, oh man, there's going to be a bloodbath at WWE when this deal closes, and people are going like, well, they need to sign more wrestlers, and they need, what about this and what about that, and like they're not thinking about what they're talking about is like back of house office personnel, you know, like Endeavor will probably have its own HR department, so WWE probably won't need its own HR department. Maybe they have a unified travel group that works on travel for UFC and for WWE. If they have a department that handles licensing for video games, that could be something that could be centralized and not done twice across the two separate companies. And those are the sorts of things that would probably lead to a lot of cuts. Like I'm sure that there will be a lot of people that lose their job at WWE, but it's people in Stamford, it's people in the office. I don't think it's like, oh no, Elias is not going to get re-signed. Like, I don't think it's a talent thing. I don't think it's an on-camera talent sort of situation. It's not a people in the creative, a team or the television production. Like, if anything, they probably need more firepower on that front. Yes, podcast, but yes, Endeavor probably has its own dedicated podcast team. You know, if you were to work for WWE in a podcasting capacity, well, that sounds like it was a fucking pain in the ass no matter what. Anyway, so yeah, this is, yeah, there will be synergies, and a lot of times synergy ends up being a code fucking phrase for, oh boy, we can probably lay off a lot of people that are working in more general capacities, legal team, accounting, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I don't know, the synergy between Rovio and Sega, I mean, again, there's no guarantee that anything Rovio works on next necessarily benefits from their experience with Angry Birds, because Angry Birds is such a juggernaut unto itself that it is probably very difficult to duplicate. But I'll put it this way. If it was easy to duplicate the success of Angry Birds, Rovio would never sell to anyone ever, because they would be sitting on $9 trillion and laughing. They would be buying Sega and going like, yeah, I don't know, you guys are getting out of the console market now. We're going to just make Billy Hatcher games for mobile now. And that's where the money is made, or whatever it is. But, yeah, an interesting merger in an industry that has been filled with them lately, I guess, is how I would look at it. And it's just another reminder when it comes to Sega. I think that people, and I am 1,000% guilty of this. That the Sega of today is not the Sega of the 90s. This is not the 16-bit Sega of your dreams. This is not the Dreamcast era corporation that had 9 different development, you know, Sega Rosso, and, you know, all the differently branded dev teams and AM2 and whatever. You know, Sega has like what? Football Simulator. Sega has 2 Point Hospital. Sega has the Total War franchises, you know, like Sega at some point transferred a lot of its efforts in, as they kind of centralized in Europe in a lot of ways. And so I'm at the time, like, you know, like it was a situation where over the years I have known a lot of people who worked at Sega, and that number just kind of dwindled out as people moved on. But also people kind of moved on because a lot of that operation, or a lot of the American operation, a lot of those shots kind of started getting called out of Europe, and Europe started doing all the PC stuff and handling all, again, the Total War, the Creative Assembly stuff, and whatever else. And so you've got Sega of Japan, and then you've got the Football Managers of the world, you know, like all the other stuff that is, you know, Sega. And it's like, it's nostalgically speaking, you know, it's like a little bit of a bummer, right? Because I think, you know, everyone wants to remember Sega as the Streets of Rage people, the crazy taxi folks. And, you know, it sounds like they're going to get back to that, right? They're going to potentially do a new Crazy Taxi and a new Jet Set Radio, like franchises that and I mean, whatever. And they're also licensing stuff out. Like, remember that Sega is also pushing the buttons that allow a new Cosmic Smash to exist in VR, which is crazy. That's cool. So, Sega is still cognizant of what it owns, and they seem to be willing to find different ways to work with that outside of the normal pathways that you would expect, right? And but Sega is a very different company now, obviously, and now they're like Atlas and stuff too, technically, right? It's weird. I don't know. It's easy to forget, and it's a lot of these mergers. Everything just absorbs into everything, and you just never think about it the same way again. And maybe it's just because I've been staring at this stuff for 30 years now. Literally 3 decades of staring at video game press releases. But like, it's still weird to me that Koei and Tecmo are the same company. The idea that Bandai and Namco are the same company just hits my ear weird. And so I never think of it that way. Like, oh yeah, the Dragon Ball Z fighters and the Tekken come from the same company. Like, no, they don't. But they technically do. And so I just, I don't know. Some of these mergers and acquisitions and everything else just kind of make a lot of sense, and it all folds together and you just go, sure, man. Yeah. All right. And then some of them, Square Enix. That's another fucking strange one. Remember when there were games coming out labeled EA Square, Electronic Arts Square? Because EA was doing like distribution for Square in some territories. How fucking bizarre that was. Man. And IDOS, obviously everything that's happened with IDOS and everything. Yeah, there's just a lot of, there are fewer companies than there were, I guess. But I never say Bandai Namco unless I'm talking about it as a publishing entity. Like if we're talking about Tekken, or if we're talking about Soul Calibur or Ridge Racer or any of the kind of like classic Namco franchises, the word Bandai never even enters my head. It's just like, oh yeah, Namco is going to put out another Tekken, and Harada's there, and it's still all that and everything. But like, it's technically what BNGI, Bandai Namco Games. Are they still going by that? They might have rebranded from that too. So yeah, I don't know. And then Activision will end up. Well, Bethesda still exists, right? So presumably, and I don't think you would want to remove the Activision brand name from the world. That would be, I think if we look at recent history and you look at recent Activision, then maybe there's a little bit less of a fondness for the Activision brand, but the historic nature of the Activision brand is, it's too important. It's too important to the history of video games, to the last 40 years of games, whatever it is, to the, going all the way back to Pitfall and River Raid and everything else. And yeah, I don't know. That's a weird one. I don't know. Mergers, but Sega buying Rovio, sure, why not? That's my only real reaction to that, is just like, yeah, I guess, I don't know. Like, again, it's probably something that I imagine if you're doing that deal, you're looking at the books currently and going like, at the rates that this is going to taper off or not taper off, then yeah, this will make sense to us in the near term. But then I just look at it and go like, what does Rovio do other than Angry Birds, and what are they capable of? They're capable of a lot. They have plenty of money and whatever else, but again, where's the, if they had already figured it out, if they had already figured out how to make games other than Angry Birds and have them be successful, they would have done it. So I just kind of look at it as like, yeah, all right, Now Sega's just going to be in the Angry Birds business, and they'll make some Sega branded Angry Birds games and maybe some games that aren't Angry Birds, but we will see. I don't know. Let's take one more break. We'll come back and we'll do the rest of the news. Stay tuned. Penis possessors, I'm talking to you. That's right. This episode is brought to you in part by Blue Chew. Let's talk about it. Is it working? Is it working the way it's supposed to? The meat slab. What am I even saying? The old donger. No, is that a? Hey, is your dick acting like it supposed to? Yes or no? If the answer is no, Blue Chew is a unique online service that can help you. Blue Chew delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra in chewable tablets and at a fraction of the cost. You can take these things anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. The process is simple. You sign up at BlueChew.com. You consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part, all of this is done online. We live in modern times. They will ship these things directly to your house in a discreet package. But again, we live in modern times, and we live with modern treatments for any of your issues like this, you know? So there's no need to be ashamed of it. But hey, you don't have to go broadcasting it. Just, this box just shows up at your front door and you're like, all right, cool. Now I'm ready. No visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, no waiting in line at the pharmacy, all of that. Just an opportunity for you to have better sex. A little more confidence where it counts. The potential for increased performance, perhaps. All of these things may be available to you at BlueChew.com. And now Blue Chew wants you to discover your options and have some better sex. Chew it and do it. Head on over to BlueChew.com, and they've got a special deal waiting for you. Try Blue Chew for free when you use the promo code Jeff at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com, promo code Jeff, to receive your first month for free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. All right, getting back to the news, we talked how Joseph Staten had left Microsoft, where he was kind of the creative lead on the Microsoft side for Halo Infinite and so on and so forth. He has landed, and he is joining Netflix Games. Now, this is the interesting thing here, according to Eurogamer's report, is that he is joining to work on what they are calling, quote, a AAA multi-platform game. Typically, I think the Netflix gaming operation we have looked at as being mobile only and only available to Netflix subscribers. And, it's this thing that I just look at and go like, okay, as someone who's never going to subscribe to Netflix again, that might as well not even exist. But this sounds like that they are looking to get into the game in a bigger way, and to me that means selling games to a larger audience, not just doing things for Netflix subscribers, but maybe we'll see. That's really all we know so far. Because that's and Eurogamer kind of has similar thoughts that I do of like, well, this might suggest that that Netflix is looking to expand further out than just mobile games, because what he said on Twitter, the news story. Today, I'm thrilled to announce that I've joined Netflix Games as creative director for a brand new AAA multi-platform game and original IP. Let's go. Is it Mario? Does he say let's go? It's original IP. Is there a third Mario Bros? No. So yeah, in my work life, there's nothing I love more than collaborating with others to build worlds filled with iconic characters, deep mysteries, and endless adventures. So, that's interesting. I don't know. Again, the Netflix operation so far has not been especially interesting. But if they're going to go for it with an original IP and a AAA multi-platform release, then, well, I don't know. They've got the money to build a team, presumably. I don't know. If everyone stops sharing their Netflix passwords, then this game will probably be fine. So please stop sharing your Netflix password. Fucking whatever. Get VPN tunnels connected between all your friends so that you all seem like you're on the same network, so that it works for, I don't know. Last month, according to Eurogamer, Netflix announced it had 70 games in the works, 16 being developed by its growing lineup of internal studios, and the rest from external partners, with 40 due out this year. So one would assume that game has to be in like some kind of pre-production if Staten's just coming on. I wonder what state it's in. If he's like, hey, now I'm going to forge this from the ground up, or if it's like, hey, we've got this idea for there's a guy and he's got a gun in space and there's a big crater on a meteorite and I don't know, there's bad guys coming out of it. That's my sci-fi pitch. How much money can I get from Netflix for that? Is that, we call it The Hole, and it's just a hole on a meteorite and devil enemies keep coming out of it. Some of them in spaceships, but they keep landing on other planets and causing problems. We've got to close the hole. And then at the end of the first game, you blow up the meteorite, but then it turns out that the hole persists. And you blow up the meteorite, but now the hole is everywhere. Now we are all the hole. And there's an ancient alien evil. And then in the second game, you learn that it's not actually evil. The aliens are just misunderstood, and they want to live too. And maybe, just maybe, humanity and the neighboring galaxies, maybe they were the bad ones after all. Maybe we are the bad guys. Because I feel like every sentence coming out of my mouth is another $5 million coming my way, right? So let's just, can I do that? Anyway. I'm curious. That would be interesting to know if this is a situation where he gets to come in and like really define this story from the ground up, or if it is something, because it says like, brand new multi-platform game, original IP, collaborating with others to build worlds filled with iconic characters. Like, I wonder if this is something that is like his new idea from the ground up, or if they already have like something in place where they're like, we think it's about a hole in a meteorite. What do you think? And he's like, I love holes in meteorites. Let's go. I don't know. I'm going to write down this hole in the meteorite idea. You'll see. You'll all see. Also on the departing Microsoft front, Frank O'Connor, who was most recently the franchise director of the Halo series, has left the company. And he was there for just about 20 years, which is a long time. Frank O'Connor, prior to Halo, was on the media side. I want to say, was he Next Generation? He's in the future pantheon, probably OXM, some of that other stuff. If I had to, I can't remember off the top of my head, but he was press before making that move over there. And so he's been on Halo for like a couple of decades, from the Bungie days to the 343 days, and now to the getting in arguments with people about the right of cyclists to use the road alongside cars. If what I read recently was true. And yeah, so he is no longer there, and Microsoft has confirmed that. Just giving a quick quote of, "We thank Frank for his numerous contributions to the Halo franchise and wish him well going forward." Oh, and apparently he is somewhere. It says they've stared at his LinkedIn profile. It says, points to a new franchise creative director role at a currently undisclosed Seattle company where he'll be, quote, creating rich story-driven entertainment experiences across multiple media. You know, you gotta think, you know, for Halo, especially with some of these folks who have been there for a real long time in various ways and forms, I think it's a very natural thing to get to a point where you got to like really look and go like, what do I really want to be doing career wise? What is the, you know, and is this the current state of Halo and the grind, the battles that they probably had to endure to get Halo Infinite out the door? I mean, it's hard to imagine a world where the development of Halo Infinite was smooth, right? Like, we've heard bits and pieces over time about some of the things that went on over there, and you know, it sounds like it was difficult, right? So I think there's a real case to be made, like, you know, and not in a like they failed and there's got to be, you know, some of the stuff I was talking about last week, but it's more like, hey, I'm sick and tired of doing this. It's time to go do something else. And other people can solve the Halo problem. People can come in with fresh ideas and figure that out. I don't want to do this anymore. That's a totally natural and normal thing for people to say in their career. That's, again, I don't keep in contact with Frank. This isn't me saying anything that he or Joe Staten or anyone on the 343 team. But they're at a pivot point, right? Where you go like, okay, like, we put out Halo Infinite. It's been a very bumpy ride. And am I going to stay here? And someone described it. This is from a different company that was going through some turmoil. And it was something that I identified with at various points in my career, I guess. It was that idea of just like, when the chips are down, when things are fucking going bad, when you know, like, you're in a hole a little bit, you need people there that are ready to just pick up that shit sandwich and take a big bite of it and eat that whole thing and eat their way through that shit sandwich and hopefully come out the other side. You need people that are there to unfuck a thing. And that's hard, and it's not for everyone. I have reached points in my career where I've been like, I don't have the appetite anymore for any more of this shit sandwich. I can't fuck this. And it's a totally normal reaction, I think. And so I, you know, that's probably a little dramatic to lay that type of drama onto Halo. Because again, I think Halo Infinite is a really great core game. The things they've done in the year since, you know, again, I have to say this every time, because again, you know, I think that there have been issues. The game has been fumbled. There's been problems. Like, every update is like some variant of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Like, you know, there's just, it's been unable to clear its baggage. It's been unable to get away from it, right? With Halo Infinite. And so, you know, what do? You know, if the rumors are to be believed, you scrap the engine and you say, let's go with Unreal, because if we move to Unreal Engine, it solves some of the tech issues. It also probably makes it easier for us to hire up, because a lot of people in the video game industry already know how to use Unreal Engine. And so we can kind of benefit from that. It'll be easier to attract talent because they already know the tools we're using. It's not some custom thing that they're going to have to come in and ramp up on and try to figure out. It's Unreal Engine. It's a first-person shooter. Boom. Let's go. Not that it's as simple as that, but you know what I mean, right? So I think when you hit that pivot point, if that's really what they're doing, if we just take that at face value and say, oh yeah, they're going to have to continue to support Halo Infinite for a chunk of time, but also you've got a growing team over here that is working on what's next, and they're going to throw out all that old tech and hopefully clear away all the tech debt and bullshit that they struggled with to get Halo Infinite out the door, then, you know, that's a really good time, I think, to take that look in the mirror and to go like, do I really want to fucking sign up for another 5 years of this? Do I really want to devote this many more years of my life to this specific problem, or am I more intrigued by new problems somewhere else? Do I want to challenge myself with something different, or go do something else for whatever reason? That was something that talking with Ken Levine around the release of BioShock Infinite was an interesting, it was a concept that he kind of mentioned, that he brought up, that I hadn't really thought about when it comes to making games, is, you know, especially someone at a higher level, you know, franchise director, you know, creative director, like these higher up positions where you are kind of shepherding large parts of the project. It really is that thing of like, I'm signing up for the next 3 to 5 years of my life. Do I want to do that again? Is that what I want to be doing? Is that the best move for me personally? Is it the best move for the studio? You know, like all those things play factors, but at some point you have to look at yourself and just go like, what do I want to be doing? And, you know, especially with something like BioShock Infinite that was, you know, that took some time to get to market, right? And probably was not the smoothest thing in the world to get out the door either. You know, much like, well, similar to a Halo Infinite, different problems, right? That very idea of like, okay, you got to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, it's time to start pitching a new project. It's time to start moving forward with what's next, and go and get back on this horse for another however long, 3 years, 5 years, you know, like 2 years even. And you have to sit there and go like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to see this project through. And then maybe again, at the end of that process, I will have to look in the mirror again and decide. That was something, you know, because I was at times in my career signed to 3-year contracts. And so that would give me that something similar where like every 3 years it would come up for renegotiation or whatever else. And it was the contracts did not benefit me very much. So every 3 years it was like, you got to poke your head up a little bit and be like, what's happening in the rest of the world? And am I ready to do I want to go do something else, or do I want to do 3 more years of this and then, you know, see about it again? Like, where am I at in my life, my family, you know, all these other factors that kind of play into it, right? And so I think it's totally natural for some of these folks, again, you know, like Frank O'Connor on this project on Halo for damn near 20 years. It's a long time to do anything, you know? And so to me, it seems very natural. I guess like my point is like, I would not look at this and go like, Halo's doomed, everyone's fleeing the ship. You know, it's easy to want to connect all of those things, but also every individual on that team is in a different position in their lives, whether it's their families, their careers, whatever, you know, whether they want to be doing what they're truly passionate about. Is it the Master Chief? Is it telling great stories? Is it, you know, like the wide variety of reasons why people work on games and work on franchise projects that span multiple games and multiple decades. And you know, everyone kind of is going to come to those projects for different reasons. And as things change and evolve, there are plenty of great reasons to poke your head up and go, what else is out here? Because like, especially someone who's been on Halo for 20 years, I imagine at that point there are a lot of other places you could probably go if you've worked in that environment for that length of time, and go like, hey, I ran this part of the Halo project for 18 years or whatever it is. Then someone's going to go like, yeah, we want that talent. We want that knowledge. We want to know what you did to make Halo, or what everyone did to make Halo. Come over here and do some of that for us. And that's why the Bet on Soldier reboot is going to be I guess that's my long-winded way of saying I wouldn't look at this as a sky is falling kind of moment for the Halo franchise. If anything, they should figure out something different. They should think about the ways in which they are making Halo and how they want to, what does the Halo team want to do next? What is Halo in 2025, 2026, whatever it is, what does Halo mean anymore? Because Halo Infinite is kind of a weird, again, like everything changed, man. Like the fortunes of the Xbox brand are in a much different place than they were when the initial Halo trilogy was coming out, when ODST and Halo Reach, and it just felt like no one could do any wrong over there on the hardware side, software side. Like everything felt like it was firing on all cylinders, right? I mean, but the big expensive marquee games are just even more expensive and weird to maintain. The industry is at a place where the kind of one and done, packaged product plus 2 DLC hits, like that's not the way this is done anymore. Everything is like a roadmap and okay, what are we doing for the next year, the next 2 years, especially something like Halo that isn't an annual franchise. You have to then think about it. And I think like that's when you look at Halo Infinite, I think that they made a lot of the right calls with in terms of like, hey, we're going to make the multiplayer free to play. We're going to, have the campaign. Like, how does Game Pass factor into this? But whether you could pin it on the rise of Call of Duty, but also the changing fortunes of Microsoft in general. The release of the Xbox One did not do anyone any favors in any way. That was a bad time for the Xbox brand. That was a bad time for a lot of those games coming out. Like the underpowered, like the hole that they dug all at once in like a 6-month span of announcing the console to not even 6 months, really, let's call it a year of speccing it out, releasing it, whatever else. Like the amount of damage that did to the brand, the always online kerfuffle that ended up not being that big of a deal, but lingered, did some kind of damage to it. I don't know how you even quantify that, but I just remember, I remember getting into a cab, and this is after the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 were both out. And I remember having a conversation with a cab driver. I think I was in New York. And you get to talking like, oh, what do you do for a living? Whatever. You get to talking about video games, and the guy goes, I liked it. I used to love Xbox, but I had to get I gotta, like, I don't want to do that always online stuff. Like, I don't want to do the pay for that and do the, and this was after the console was already out, and so that message of like, hey, the Xbox console is a disaster and a weird mess and always online, this and that, like that lingered there was an undercurrent of that lingered, even if the reporting changed because Microsoft backpedaled on it, like that message didn't get out as far and wide as it probably needed to. And then you have the console comparisons. God, remember, we're kind of like revisiting it in a weird way with Redfall. But remember Xbox One games only running at 900p and all the resolution stuff around that console. And it was just, it was just not a powerful enough device compared to the PlayStation 4. And then they both had to come out with their half-step consoles. And then Microsoft was like, well, we're not going to fucking do that again. And so we're going to make sure that our console is the most powerful. And then in a few years, they had to do it all over again with new consoles anyway. And, just that mess. If you didn't hear about Redfall, Redfall on Xbox is not going to launch with its performance mode. So it will be locked at 30 frames per second. It will be locked in quality mode. And the performance mode will come at a later date. That's bad. But I guess, to me, the reasons why the Redfall thing is bad extend beyond the idea of not having your quality mode or not having your performance mode. To me, it is the idea that all of these console games, since these consoles launched, have had to try to make those trade-offs. And it's not to say that these consoles are underpowered or what have you. It is the idea that now that we are now treating these consoles like they are mini PCs by exposing these sorts of options and compromising out of the gate. Spider-Man was like this when the PlayStation 5 launched. It was like, all the talk was like, it's got all this beautiful ray tracing and what an amazing looking video game. Anyway, if you want to run it at 60, you can, but we're going to turn off a lot of those bells and whistles that we just spent all this time talking about. You're like, what the fuck? Really? Like, at launch, we're talking about compromise? It sucks. It sucks, and that's the sort of thing that gets us back to a point where, we probably will see a PlayStation 5 Pro, right? And Microsoft will probably have to respond in kind with another half-step console of its own. Xbox Series Z. And I don't know. That's the part about the Redfall stuff that bums me out, is that this is even happening. That we still have games coming out with the performance versus I want it all. And that's, I think, why I feel so willing to overspend on a PC. I think that there's just a certain, and not everyone wants to do that. They don't want to, this isn't some weird, console owners getting, but at the same time, having to, the way they have to expose these compromises to console owners, and I'd be curious to know this. I think one of the questions in email kind of gets into this, is what, how many users ever touch those settings? What percentage of the console ownership ever goes into the settings enough to even look at the performance versus quality? And of those that do, what do they actually prefer? What does the data tell us about 60 frames per second and how important it really is? Because I view it as of paramount importance, as of but I suspect that that's, again, one of those things that as you kind of go further and further out of these rings of conversation of the people that are, online all the time and consuming video game news on a regular basis, the kind of more casual you get, if you will, that you get into rings of players who just don't even know that exists and they don't even fucking care. Right? What's the, it's, so the Redfall thing seems like a big deal. Oh my God. And to me, I go yeah, well, shit, man, I'll play that on PC because I don't want to run that game at 30 frames per second. I don't want to fucking run any game at 30 frames per second if I can help it. So you know, again, what percentage of the actual player base of everyone that will touch Redfall on Game Pass or whatever, what percentage of those players will ever even look at that setting or toggle that setting or care about that setting? I think that's maybe the larger question, right? It seems like one of those things that you go like, that's got to be a minor number. Like the 30 versus 60 stuff has to be something that we are all just doing online because we are brain poisoned, because we care. The curse of caring is the worst curse of them all. Where, you know, like we fucking give a shit about this stuff because look, you know, like you're not listening to this podcast if you don't know anything about video. You know, like you probably have at least an opinion on this stuff if you're this far down the rabbit hole to be watching this, right? So, yeah, I guess my guess is that once you get into the real numbers of the real people who are out there playing these games, you probably reach a point pretty quickly where it's a bunch of players who just don't fucking care about any of that shit, and they're like, 60 what? And you're going, 60 hertz, god damn it, and they're like, hurt what? And you're like, you have motion smoothing turned on your TV, don't you? And they go, what? I have motion smoothing turned on my TV, by the way. My TV is an asshole. My TV is a jerk. My TV likes to fuck with me. So this TV, which is where the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X are hooked up, is pretty much only used to watch Baby Einstein and Peppa Pig these days. And so, you know, the console stuff, I'm not spending as much time with console games these days as I am with PC. So there's a lot of Peppa Pig happening. A lot of Peppa Pig. My son likes it too. There's a lot of Peppa Pig happening in this house. I had the TV set. I went through the whole process of just like, okay, this guide online says I should set this to here and go through and turn this off, and the brightness should be here and the color should be here. If I'm doing it for Xbox, it should be set here. For the PlayStation input, it should be set like this. And everything was turned off. The Peppa Pig stuff comes in through Plex, which is an app on the TV, which is a separate input from all of the other ones. So it's only that Plex input that has that turned on. So what happened is I had it all set up, even on that Plex input. I'm like, well, I want it in cinema mode and do all this and spent like probably 3 hours just going through it and getting it all set up when I first got the television. And this has happened twice now, and I didn't even know why until it happened again recently, where it came up and it was like, hey, you got your brightness turned up high, and that might not be great for your eyes or whatever. Do you want to adjust this stuff automatically on the contrast? Do you want to set the contrast a little bit lower? And the answers were basically like yes and no. And I was looking at it as like, well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Peppa Pig, I guess I don't want the TV burning my children's eyes out. So yeah, sure. And as soon as I hit that, it fucking wiped every setting, and it went back to default on everything and turned all the motion smooth. So Peppa Pig has never looked fucking, Peppa Pig looks like a fucking cutscene now because it runs at a solid 60. And so I look at it every day when it's on. It's usually on from the hours of 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. I've been up since 3 a.m. And every morning I look at it and go like, God damn it. I need to fix this shit. And I haven't yet. I don't want my kids getting used to this 60 frames per second television. Though also the other thing is sometimes I look at it and go like, you know what? This looks all right. as someone who plays video games more than I watch movies or television. Peppa Pig runs real smooth. Runs real smooth. I just need to turn it off. I just haven't had time. I don't know. Let's talk about North Dakota. This comes to us courtesy of Video Games Chronicle. A senator from North Dakota, Kevin Kramer, has sent a letter to Sony, the CEO, Kenichiro Yoshida, quote, regarding its anti-competitive behavior and to request information on the company's acquisition agreements. This makes Senator Kramer, I believe, the 11th lawmaker. We have like another 10 members of Congress that sent 2 letters to Sony. Basically saying like, hey, what's going on? You guys keep signing exclusive agreements to limit games from appearing on competing consoles, huh? We sure would like to know more about that. And the claim, he goes on, I am concerned Sony's dominance of that market and its efforts to perpetuate its current position imperils an important economic development opportunity for North Dakota. And this is, look, I have never been to North Dakota. It would be nice if this were true, but I have my doubts. Kramer states that North Dakota has, quote, developed a strategy to lead the nation in computer science and cybersecurity education, and that preparing students for careers in gaming is an important component of this effort. Given the growing significance of the gaming industry to North Dakota, Kramer says, I am troubled by reports Sony appears to leverage its dominance to exclude competition rather than enabling choice for developers and players. Increasingly, it appears Sony's dominance is attributable to exclusionary practices, including paying game publishers to not distribute their games on rival platforms. He then goes on to claim this VGC article is a really good recap of this. Goes on to claim that Sony's attempt to oppose Microsoft's proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard is an example of its anti-competitive conduct, saying it's even more troubling that Sony's lobbying of the FTC and other regulators began shortly after Sony itself acquired Bungie. And then he's asking Sony for a list of documents, including all agreements that give Sony an exclusive right to distribute a third-party game, all agreements between Sony and third-party publishers that prevent them from releasing their games on other systems, all internal company documents describing the strategic rationale for Sony's decision to acquire Bungie, and all correspondence with U.S. government or regulatory agencies relating to video game competition. It's very interesting. The other letters that came from Congress a while back sounds like that they also kind of roped in Japan, the market of Japan, and saying that basically what we're looking at is like the way they are framing it is, here we have Japan preventing an American company from competing in Japan, and that's not a cool thing for global trade, basically. And yeah, so they Video Games Chronicle also has a note here from the Axios version of the story, who said Microsoft has previously confirmed that its government affairs team has discussed Sony's conduct with members of Congress, which may explain the timing of these political accusations aimed at Sony. So that's fucking this is getting brutal, I guess. This is it's getting ugly, and it'll be interesting to see, like the American lawmakers that are kind of taking this story and running with it a little bit and going like, hey, wait a minute. You guys sure are protesting this deal a lot. Wait a minute. You guys are doing some pretty janky shit, huh? Maybe this will end up with a lot of, this is, Sony kind of brought this on themselves a little bit, I guess. Why is Nintendo exempt? Because they are not playing the same game that either of these other companies are. They do not have a device that is viewed as 100% competitive with the other devices, the way an Xbox and a PlayStation are. Also, third-party games on Switch are not often big sellers. So Nintendo is selling Nintendo games on a Nintendo console. And they are not out there buying exclusives the same way Sony is. And, there's Video Games Chronicle here cites a few examples of games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy 16, which are not on Xbox. And they also cite Street Fighter V. Says another key example from last generation was Capcom's Street Fighter V, which has remained exclusive to PlayStation 4 and PC ever since its release in 2016. I'm not sure if those are going to be perfect examples of this, because there are, the Final Fantasy stuff probably is very good, but Street Fighter V is not a good one, because I think Street Fighter V is more of a Bayonetta 3 type of situation, where Street Fighter V probably would not have happened if Sony had not showed up and offered to fund part of it. So that's probably not a case that would go, like, I think if you dug into the books around Street Fighter V and went like, why isn't this on Xbox? You would discover that like Sony's funding came from a very early part in the project, and that they put money into getting that game made, and it probably would not have happened at all without them. Final Fantasy VII Remake, that's a different story. But I know that there have been cases in the past where games that Square has published have not ended up on Xbox, but not due to any paper between them and Sony. It has just been Square just going like, and having a certain amount of indifference to it. We talked about it recently that, like, there have been some of these cases where Microsoft has shown up to like fund things, to make things happen, basically, to throw money at a publisher and say, hey, put this game out on Xbox, let us put it out on Game Pass. And they go, okay, sure. Now that you've shown up with a bunch of money, yes, we will do that. And you almost wonder if that isn't creating a situation where publishers know that they just like, well, I'm not going to put it out on Xbox in year one because we know that Microsoft will show up to pay us to do it later. And we're not just going to do it for nothing because the Xbox is not a factor in Japan. And so it's not, it's not, I think the Xbox brand is still not top of mind for a lot of Japanese publishers and developers, like Capcom's has always been very forward thinking when it comes to the Xbox brand. And Sega generally was pretty good, but it's, I guess like I suspect that if the government truly digs into these documents and truly digs into what Sony is doing, they're going to find cases that look like a smoking gun, that it just turns out these games didn't come to Xbox because of the indifference of the Japanese market towards the Xbox. That's not to say that there are not exclusivity deals happening. Of course they are, right? But also that's not unique to Sony. Dead Island 2 is not coming to Steam because it's only coming to the Epic Store. What else? Crime Boss Rockay City is an Epic Store exclusive. So, Steam users being deprived of big games. Big games. But yes, this is, look, I think the whole business with exclusives, I think it makes sense for it to happen. It makes sense for a company to go out there and and pay that sort of money to get access to a game exclusively. But also, I think I see it from the other side of it of like, yeah, this is anti-competitive conduct, and probably not good for consumers overall when it comes to that stuff. And then when you get into the other part of it of like, now you've got American, Congress looking at it through the lens of, this is Japan shutting down an American competitor and preventing this American competitor from gaining a meaningful foothold in the market because they are buying these exclusives and locking out poor Microsoft, poor Xbox. Then that probably gets uglier faster if they are looking at it in that kind of larger lens of like international trade and whatever else. But we'll see how that all goes. I don't know. The timing of like Sony acquiring Bungie and then being like, wait, you're buying Activision? That's not right. That is kind of silly. But entertainment is built on exclusivity deals. Sports broadcasting especially, right? Like, who controls the rights to fucking broadcast football games and baseball games, and who wants to bid on the rights to show wrestling on television or whatever else. It's yeah, so it's and then the local exactly, the local blackouts that come with that, and the nasty practices that that sports broadcasting, baseball especially, what that looks like these days sucks. It's fucking terrible. You've got like, oh well, Amazon signed this deal they picked up this series, and so if you want to watch this series, you need to subscribe to Amazon, or you need to subscribe to Apple TV, or this is a Netflix exclusive. Like that's all pretty normal. But yeah, I don't know. That doesn't necessarily make it right. We'll see if this goes anywhere. I don't think. Yeah, Danny, exactly. You can listen to most music almost everywhere now, finally. Yeah, but remember there was a brief period of time where it was like, oh, hey, this, like, remember when people were trying to debut albums on fucking Tidal? Like, that was going to happen? Like, come on. But then even, yeah, you'd have like, oh, Apple Music has this and Spotify doesn't, and some of the weird stuff there around that was really, but that even before the streaming services came along, you would have situations where like, this album's a Walmart exclusive for a week and then it's out everywhere else. Or God, the era when you would get bonus tracks depending on where you bought it, where it's like, oh, if you get this CD at Best Buy, it has 3 more fucking tracks on it, and this deluxe edition is exclusive to Walmart, and this one's here. It's like there's like a handful of albums that, like, to get every single track, you would have to have like 4 different versions of it or something, and it's just stupid. It's just stupid. We're mostly past that, but yeah. Suicide Squad has been delayed. This had been rumored that it was going to get pushed to 2024, and so it has. It will now launch on February 2nd, 2024. They made the statement on Twitter. That game was originally going to come out next month, and now it is not. We have made the tough but necessary decision to take the time needed to work on getting the game to be the best quality experience for players. And I don't know. Sure. It sounds like it wasn't ready, but also this isn't going to change I seriously doubt that this will change the things that people were taking issue with about Suicide Squad. Where like they showed it at the State of Play thing. What was that? February? Anyway, they showed it there. You had the leaked screenshots showing all the battle pass cosmetic, everything that made it look like a live game that people were like, oh, fuck this. That they're probably not stripping all of that out. They're probably not taking this time to revamp that aspect of the game, right? I mean, it's almost certainly a case of like, this game needs more time to just be a good game, a better game. And, you know, maybe this will be a less crowded, because, you know, if this game was going to ship next month, you know, not that it's a pure platform competitor or whatever, but Zelda's coming out next month. We're coming up against a bunch of other games. Like, you know, games are starting to come out. Is Suicide Squad the thing that you're going to go, yeah, this is definitely the game I'm getting? I wonder what they'll change. That's a long time. February is a long, you know, that's like them saying, fuck it, we're missing the holiday even. Like we're going to blow past holiday and ship in early, like Q1 of next year. That's a long time, but not long enough to completely revamp the entire game. So I wonder what that even looks like, man. Andy Robinson of Video Games Chronicle talked a bit about the game last year on their podcast, and they are quoting him in their article. It's interesting because some of the people I've spoken to who are working on the game actually have a lot of positive things to say about it, especially compared to Gotham Knights. I've been told this is not another Gotham Knights, that everyone who's working on it is actually quite optimistic about the combat loops they've made and the game world and things like that. Sure, yeah. I mean, it's if it had better not be another Gotham Knights, right? I mean, damn. Like, if they're looking at it and anything on its trajectory seems like it is approaching Gotham Knights territory, then either push the game a year or kill it. Because, like, you don't want to ship it and have it be that, right? Like, that's not, that's a real low bar. It's a real low bar. Remember Gotham Knights? No, you probably don't. And then the last story, this is barely a story. I don't know. I don't know what to even make of this. I don't even know what to make of this. This Cliff Bleszinski of Cliff Bleszinski fame says that his lawyer contacted him about LawBreakers. I don't really know. I don't really know what that's it. That's the story. Hang on, I'm seeing if I can. It says fans should stay tuned for news is the bit that Video Games Chronicle extrapolated from this. Because Cliff said that he received a text from his lawyer about the game. That's it. Stay tuned. That doesn't necessarily, well, I don't know. If he's saying stay tuned, then presumably that means that there's something else potentially going on, but like that's kind of it. LawBreakers, if you remember, LawBreakers was a competitive shooter with a bit of low gravity gameplay in it. And it lasted less than a year. It was not a terrible game, but it's the sort of thing that you play it and you go like, okay, yeah. Like it never seemed like something that was going to gain a real foothold in the market. It never seemed like something that was strong enough. It's no Radical Heights. Bryn is right. What about Radical Heights? Radical Heights was the battle royale game that they pivoted to that also did not make it, but it had it had a bike, look cool. Radical Heights is not the worst idea, but yeah, LawBreakers, you know, it came and went, and yeah, exactly. Like it kind of came when people were maybe thinking more about Overwatch and a lot of that stuff. And the Video Games Chronicle kind of is recapping the dismantling of LawBreakers. 8 months after release, Boss Key, which was the studio's name, issued a statement saying, "The fact is, LawBreakers failed to find enough of an audience to generate the funds necessary to keep it sustained in the manner we had originally planned for and anticipated. And while a pivot to free-to-play may seem like the easiest change to make, a change of this magnitude takes publishing, planning, and resources to do it." And so September of 2018, the game was taken offline. It was, and again, it never was like, it was never, LawBreakers never seemed like an awesome video game. It was never, but it just came out in that miasma of like, when did Overwatch 1 come out? May 2016. So, there we are, like the game getting announced and stuff, like or coming out like a full year after Overwatch 1. So that would put it kind of at post Battleborn even, right? Because Battleborn was also May 2016. I remember playing LawBreakers and going like, yeah, I don't know, this seems okay, but again, it was just one of those situations of like that it never seemed like an especially great game. It seemed okay, and in that market for competitive shooters, you just can't have an okay game. And it just, there are too many other games out there that are not getting massive updates, but have been around for, whether it's Team Fortress 2. And now, I mean, hell, you would probably look at it and you would maybe bring up like a Valorant or something in this conversation now, or a Counter-Strike 2, or, like, hey, Valve keeps threatening to do more with Team Fortress 2 or whatever. And, I would be curious to see what this ends up meaning. It's hard to think of it in terms of like, is someone contacting Cliff's lawyer because they're like, we've got to bring back LawBreakers, or are they like, hey, we want to buy these assets and turn it into a free-to-play game, or what's the status of this? Maybe it's someone contacting the lawyer saying like, hey, it's because we never got paid our severance, can we own the LawBreakers IP? Or who knows? I don't know what the situation is with that stuff. It's but it doesn't feel like the market right now is suddenly more kind to games like that. So it's hard to look at it and go like, someone's going to bring back LawBreakers, because why would you at this point? I'm trying not to be shitty about it, but why would you do that? And meanwhile, Cliff is doing a billion other things outside of games. His book came out. He's did a comic book recently. He is apparently thinking about getting into doing stand-up. And he's been producing on Broadway. So he's been keeping busy. He's not out there living and breathe, he's not living and dying video games the way he used to. He's got a wide variety of interests. He's doing all this stuff. It's not like he's out there going like, we got to get LawBreakers back. I need it. So I wonder what the situation is there. That's it for the news. So a weird collection of stories this week, man. But yeah, the LawBreakers thing just it's a strange one. I don't know. It's a strange one. Let's get into some emails here. And podcast@guard.bike is the email address. You can send in your emails to me and I will receive them. I will read some of them ahead of time. Some of them I will just go into raw based on the title if they are sent at the right time, such as Davis from Syracuse, who writes in and says, "Who is Miami Mike?" Throughout the years, you've occasionally dropped his name whenever talking about conventions or anime. Who is Miami Mike? When was the last time you saw him? What do you think he's doing now? Miami Mike, as far as I hope Miami Mike is 6 feet under. Miami Mike knows what he did. I don't know Miami Mike. You'd have to. I'm just gonna say Google it. Go ahead and look up Miami Mike. I don't even know that I could recap the story all that well. But yes, Anime News Network had a great, exhaustive research story on Miami Mike and what he did and all of that. Yeah. Is it their podcast as well? Yeah, I remember reading an article. And I am not equipped to talk about Miami Mike in any kind of serious way. But do look it up because it is a fascinating story. David from York in the United Kingdom writes in and asks, after randomly playing some Ridge Racer 3D over the weekend, I thought I would ask the expert. I'm glad to be carving out a bit of space as a noted Ridge Racer expert. I don't feel that I'm a Ridge Racer expert, but I guess compared to the average person, I probably am. I thought I'd ask the expert. R4 seems like the undisputed #1 Ridge Racer game, but what would make up the rest of a top 5? The first one and 7 seem like good candidates. Dare I suggest Unbounded in there? No, Unbounded. Ridge Racer Unbounded is not a top 5 Ridge Racer game. It's a bottom 5 Ridge Racer game. I would probably say that the best Ridge Racer game is either R4 or it is Ridge Racers 2 for the PSP. The 2 PSP games are quite good, but they use a lot of the same tracks that were in Ridge Racer 7 and Ridge Racer 6. Rage Racer is probably pretty low on the list, if I had to say. It's not that Rage Racer is a bad game. It's just, I might also say Ridge Racer Revolution, the second game, is probably pretty low, just because it's more than the first game was, but not necessarily all that much more. But yeah, I would. Yeah, I guess I would probably say the top game is probably either R4 or Ridge Racers 2 for the PSP, because that PSP game collates so much of the stuff that was in those other late era Ridge Racer games into one place that it's a pretty good compilation of all that. It's got its own good visual style. It has a wide soundtrack covering a lot of the games across the series and everything. Ridge Racer 7 is a good game. Ridge Racer 6 is kind of the same. I think that's one of the biggest problems, that 6 and 7 are kind of not that different. It's just one was on Xbox and one was on PlayStation. That's like frustrating that they're like numbered games, but also console exclusives. And so 7 was just like, oh, we'll bring the stuff from 6 over to the PlayStation. Why don't we do that? We haven't done that. Sure, let's do that. And I think that's kind of annoying, I guess. But like, yeah, I guess, 7. It doesn't. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the PSP games don't just have stuff from the first 5 games. That's right. It's not just. It doesn't have all the stuff from 7. So 7 stands on its own. You don't really need to get 6 because 7 exists. Unless you don't have a PlayStation and you only have an Xbox, and then 6 is kind of the only thing. You can play Ridge Racer 6 on a current Xbox. But yeah, R4 is a really cool game because they just did a lot with the progression in that game in terms of building a career mode and the other things that you would do, that it's just a richer experience than the 3 games that come before it. And also it has the JogCon controller, which is a, tiny little wheel that actually has pretty good force feedback and resistance on it when you're steering. And that was really awesome. That was a really cool controller back then. But yeah, I'd probably say that PSP game, R4 and Ridge Racer 7 are probably the kind of, that probably covers most of Ridge Racer, really. So that's probably how I would go with it. Joe from New York says, why does Monster Energy think they have claim to anything with the word monster in it? They keep trying to make trademark claims against games and anime and other things that have nothing to do with energy drinks just because they have the word monster in the title, even Pokemon. Are they dumb? Or is this working for them somehow? It's probably a combination of both. Yeah, no, if you have not heard, the Monster Energy Corporation sucks shit on the trademark front. They are always kind of pursuing things that have the word monster in it, much like that guy who owned the word edge and then Mirror's Edge and everything else. He was trying to sue out of existence or, try to basically get paid. And then I think they eventually took that from him. So Monster is trying to do this. Monster is in a unique, other weird situation because there have been video games that have been branded as like Monster Energy Supercross or whatever the fuck it was. And so it's a big company that has the ability to throw their weight around when it comes to their trademark, combined with a legal team who thinks that they need to defend that trademark in every arena they can, and that they are duty bound to do so. And so they are out there pursuing this stuff. Yes, the Ubisoft game Immortal Phoenix Rising was originally called Gods and Monsters, and that is apparently the reason why they changed it, is because they just didn't want to deal with that bullshit. They have occasionally at times gone after Pokemon because in Japan that is Pocket Monsters, and they've been trying to leverage it there. It sucks. It sucks when companies do this. It's shitty when companies do this. There's no confusion. Even in a case where the Monster Energy brand gets used in a video game, there is still no confusion. And also, monster is such a generic and standard term that it seems impossible for them to truly defend it. Monsters, again, such a generic term. But yeah, it's crappy. It's terrible. And it's just, it always feels like a shakedown. That they're just like, oh, well, maybe we can get some money out of this or whatever. And, they've got a board legal team. Like, you're the legal team for Monster Energy. What else are you doing? You're just like sitting around going like, well, I don't know. What? I guess we could sue. I guess that'd be something to do. Chris from Fort Wayne asks the eternal question, do you have any opinion on Eminem or his music? And did you ever watch 8 Mile? It's a really weird question because yes. And it's like, maybe it's just the age that I am at or whatever, but Eminem was such a massive part of culture for so many years that he was inescapable. He was literally everywhere. He was the biggest musician on the planet for some period of time. I bleached my hair before Eminem came on the scene, but that didn't matter. And so that was probably one of the reasons why I stopped bleaching my hair, because it was just like, okay, that's associated with that dude now. I just can't. I don't want to deal with that. Eminem is an amazing lyricist. I think that almost everything he has written over the first, let's call it 40 years of his rap career, he's still in there, I guess, is only gotten harder to listen to. That shit did not age well across the board. At a time when shit like CKY and all of the other dumb shit that was going on in culture, Eminem was a perfect fit for that. I also think that Eminem, I'm not saying he's responsible, but I think the casual discussion of opiates across all of Eminem's early material is like troubling to me now when I think about it. When I think about all of the people I knew that were into that shit, that some of them didn't make it out. You know, it's that stuff is a little harder to look back on now and go, yes, no, yeah. Yes, crush them. Yes, cut them in half, crush them and laugh, whatever. You know, like all of that shit is just like, ugh. But obviously he was going through a lot of that himself at the time. So I guess the big thing with Eminem is I think he, again, like the flow, the way he raps, it is incredible. There is something to the way he puts all that stuff together that is astounding. And he is in some ways the best one to ever do it. I think the thing that has happened over the more recent years is that he forgot to make good songs. It was a thing where like he is talented and he just wants to show off. And so every song he puts out now is like him fucking going through trying to compact as many syllables into a fucking bar as possible and just going like, and stuffing everything as full as he possibly can in a way that when you hear it, you go like, that is technically very impressive. All of this rhymes. That's crazy. Wow. Amazing. This is a terrible fucking song. This song is garbage. The beat sucks. And the way he is rhyming over it, like everything, every word out of his mouth, when you really listen to what he is saying now, it just sucks. It's just fucking boring. He has nothing left to say. But boy, he is really good at saying it. And it's a sort of thing where, yes, he just kind of ran out of fucking material or whatever. Like Recovery was probably the last good thing he did. And even that came after 2 or 3 fucking terrible fucking albums. So yeah, it's like one of those things where like I think you can only really look at him now and go like, you are very technically impressive, but boy, you sure were better at this when you were trying to rap like Masta Ace. You sure were better at this when you had someone like a Dr. Dre or someone next to you saying like, why don't you ride the beat a little bit on this one and maybe take a step back on this. Maybe just try to make something actually good across the board. Maybe play with the beat a little bit back and forth and not just yell over it the entire time with as many little syllables as like everyone knows that you can do this. Like everyone knows like, oh, Eminem, that guy raps fucking crazy. You've done it. It's just you have nothing to prove on that front anymore. So instead, maybe take a step back from that weird fucking ledge you're on and, or hey, save that for the Cypher God. And so I think if he had someone near him, someone in his circle who was like able to tell him like, hey, fucking stop rapping like this. Fucking like, let's make good music across the board, top to bottom, inside and out, instead of just like you fucking writing these ridiculous, dumbass fucking verses. You're just like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you're just like a robot. You can just you can spit these out, huh? Man, that's impressive. No one fucking cares anymore. You know? That ship has sailed. It's not like there's other people out there fucking rapping that you're like, man, that's, there are some people that are obviously impressive fucking lyricists. I'm not saying that hip hop is in some fucking sorry state, but hey, depth in your lyricism is not the most valued skill in this day and age. How about it? Maybe that's the but yeah, I think he's gone off the deep end on that stuff, and great in a cypher, amazing off the head, and one of the best to ever do it. a problematic fave, if you will, but at the same time, like, you know, it's fucking like his shit is unfucking listenable now. Like the shit he's putting out now. And people try to tell me like, oh no, man, there's this track and Joyner Lucas and this and that. I'm like, fuck all this shit. It's fucking terrible. You're fucking lying to yourselves. He's just fucking, yeah, he's just putting out dog shit. Highly technically impressive dog shit. If this was the Unreal Engine, this would be a 16 fucking million polygon piece of dog shit that you would look at and go like, this looks like a fucking piece of dog shit. Man, that's cool. That's a very realistic looking piece of dog shit you've made. But, you know, when Eminem puts out an album, I listen to it once and just shake my head and go like, fuck this. What am I doing? I remember, like, he put one of the albums he put out, I was at PAX, and I remember that morning taking an extra hour to getting ready. It's like, well, this album just came out like the night before or whatever, and I'm like listening to it in the hotel room. And I'm, you know, whatever, I'm shaving, taking a shit, whatever, listening to Eminem. Just going like, this sucks. You listen to it once and just go like, whatever, man. Him putting out albums used to feel like some kind of event or whatever. And then like now it's just like some hilarious joke. And it's sad, you know, it's sad in a way because you go like, oh, well, you know, yeah, if he was still able to, you know, like he's been on some astounding tracks. I think some of the writing he did for Dr. Dre has been very impressive. You know, some of the stuff that he wrote for Dre to perform in a ghostwriter sort of way. It's like, that's impressive. But also like, you know, like not to just like sit here and fucking talk about this any more than we have to, but we're talking about it. Eminem's not funny. Eminem is not culturally relevant, or he doesn't stay up on things in a way that, like you feel like at any moment Eminem might drop another track where he's talking like Eric Cartman and think it's like the fucking pinnacle of fucking right now pop culture. You know what I mean? Like he seems like a dude who is just like gonna make another fucking South Park reference any day now and think it's like, yeah, man, I'm fucking got him. Like, and you're like, what? What? Who cares, dude? So yeah, you know, whatever, man. I think I think that he's an era defining MC. I think that he's fucking he has been responsible for some amazing music over the years. Again, you know, like it's stuff that is he says some things that are fucked up. Like we can admit that. It's not a fucking secret. But I think that he has come some amount of distance on that stuff a little bit, not all the way. And yeah, like I said, I think he's rapping like he's got something to prove, but it's like he's rapping for he's trying to prove the wrong thing. The thing he's trying to prove is nothing that anyone is calling him out on. Or if they are, they shouldn't be taken seriously. Like no, Machine Gun Kelly is not out there saying like Eminem doesn't rap well, does he? I mean, or Game recently was trying to say, was that recently within the last 5 years? That's recent enough. Trying to say like, oh, Eminem is not, I can rap better than Eminem. Like, no, you fucking can't. Game, you cannot. You don't fucking fool yourself into thinking you can out. And I like Game. I like the Game more than most people should. But I like the Game because I too like NWA, and I appreciate that he has written so many raps about how much he likes NWA. But for Game to be out there being like that he's gonna battle Eminem, like, no, come on, give me a fucking break. Adam from Portland writes in and says, I was listening to you talk about the end of live support for Dreams, and you mentioned that while the current plan is to preserve user-made content, there may be another impending shutdown somewhere down the line. Is there anything stopping a company from deciding to mostly shut down servers? In the case of Dreams, for instance, could Media Molecule decide to turn on the servers once a year for the month of December and save 11/12 of the cost to run the game? Or is it more complicated than just turning on the servers? What? No. I guess you could. There's no reason why you couldn't bring down the servers and turn them back on, I guess. But you would have a game that for most of the year fails in a very ungraceful way, where it's just like failed to connect to servers and whatever generic error message. So you'd have to patch the game to account for this rolling schedule or calendar, so that the people who get the game and put it in, they go like, well, why doesn't it work? And so at least comes up with an error message that says, sorry, the game only works in December. But none of that solves the ongoing problem of running a server-based game, where let's say, hey, whatever you used to build your server stack, your infrastructure, whatever you want to call it, someone finds exploits in that software. Now, if the servers aren't running, then no one can exploit your server and steal your data or whatever else. But it still means that when you turn the servers back on, you don't know if they're as secure as they should be or not. Especially if you haven't been keeping up on it for 11/12 of the year. So it's not always going to be the costs of keeping computers turned on or keeping some cloud service running or whatever. Like that's not, there's costs associated with that, but you would still have to pay the storage costs associated with storing the data for Dreams. Even if no one was accessing it, you'd still incur some fees there. But you still have to kind of like, oh, well, we still need to be able to deploy security fixes to this server as long as it remains up. If we turn them off and leave them off, then we never have to think about it again. And we don't have to care that like whatever choices we made 8 years ago to build this server are now horribly insecure or whatever else. Like the stuff that happened with Little Big Planet. I mean, they ran into that. They literally ran into that with a Little Big Planet. So yeah, you don't have to keep someone around who knows that old code and knows how to work with it. There's a lot of stuff like that. That's that stuff, those problems don't go away. And so that's probably more of the cost. And in some cases, it's not even necessarily a hard cost. It's like, we have to put headcount against supporting this game, even if it is limited support. That's headcount that we can't put on our new game because they're busy supporting the old one. You can't just have people sit around for the rest of their career maintaining the Dreams servers, right? And when those people move on, it's, do you have people that have that knowledge in the company? Is it well documented enough to where anyone could pick it up and whatever else? You kind of run into those sorts of situations. Gaffo in the Twitch chat is also correct. It's not just security stuff. It's also changing legal risks like the GDPR, the right to be forgotten, CPSA. And yeah, so, there are legal changes that might impact your servers, your games, and everything there too. So it's more complicated than just leaving a computer turned on. Mark from San Diego asks, Mark from San Diego says, I've been thinking about the Nemesis system again. Specifically, I'm wondering why so many journalists at the time seemed convinced that the system would end up being implemented in every open world game for the next several years, and then what actually ended up happening was that it only appeared in the second Middle-earth game, and then we never really heard about it again. Was there insider talk that it was being used in other games, or was it just an educated guess that ended up being off the mark? It's copyright. It's because Warner went and got a patent or something on that specific system that prevented other developers from using anything like it. The Nemesis system, the concept of having enemies that adapt and adjust and doing it in that way, is a good one that more games should have used, and they probably would have used if they hadn't been worried about legal threats from Warner over it. And, Assassin's Creed tried to use something like it Yes, the Wonder Woman game that they are developing apparently uses some portion of it. But much like we didn't see mini games in loading screens for years because Namco patented that after using it in Ridge Racer and Tekken. I guess they went out and protected that system because everyone was so head over heels about how cool that system was. They were like, oh shit, we should protect ourselves on that and make sure no one else can use it. And so they did. I think if not for that more games would have used that system. So it wasn't a case of insider talk about it being used in other games or whatever else. It was really just a situation of like, this is an amazing system that helps personalize an open world game just a little bit more. And every game should use this. And then they couldn't. So they didn't. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. Landon from St. Paul, Minnesota says, wasn't there a rumor that we'd get Wind Waker and Skyward Sword re-releases on Switch? Skyward Sword has been out on Switch for almost 2 years now, so what gives? Are they just sitting on the Switch version waiting for a rainy day? I can't imagine porting the Wii U version would be all that intensive. Should I just emulate the Wii U version? That game is bitchin'. Who the fuck knows, man? It would make sense for them to put Wind Waker out on Switch, I guess, but rumors are just rumors, and even well-sourced rumors are. This is something that, not to just keep talking about wrestling, but this is something that gets me about the way people react to reporting about wrestling rumors, backstage stuff. There's never been an official announcement that Wind Waker was definitely coming. And so right up until they do that, all those rumors could have been correct. For all we know, there is a finished port of Wind Waker sitting somewhere that they're just sitting on and trying to figure out what to do with it. But until they announce it, none of that matters because they could just never announce it and never release it. They could decide, oh, we don't want to do that for whatever reason, or maybe it's a shitty port and they're like, oh, we're not going to put this out. Or maybe they announce it later this year and it comes out. I don't know. Maybe they're looking at how well the Metroid Prime remaster does and trying to think about that. There are a number of different scenarios that could be at play here, but it doesn't, the things we kind of can't directly infer is that we don't know that the people reporting those rumors were wrong. And also we don't know if they were ever right. Obviously people can check back in with sources and go, what's up with that? And, maybe the answer is like, yeah, they were working on it, but it's not on a release schedule anywhere. Like I'm looking through my papers and, it's not on any release schedule that I have access to or whatever. They've got a new Zelda game coming out right now. So obviously they're not going to put it out alongside that. But the reality of it is that we don't know. And the people reporting rumors many of them have very valid sources, right? I mean, it's not, I'm not saying, oh, these people are just making shit up. It's nothing. It's never that simple, right? Or it's rarely that simple, especially from people who have track records of reporting these sorts of rumors. Like that stuff comes from somewhere. But at the end of the day, we don't know. Like I said, it could be done. The code can be absolutely complete, and they're just like, yeah, I don't know. This will be something we release when we have a lull in our release, a lull in our release schedule, or something else falls through. We can always just slot Wind Waker in there, and that'll shut people up for another 9 months. So they might just be holding it in case something else bad happens. Now, this is something that in the world of wrestling, a thing I see very often is people saying that the people that report rumors and leaks in the wrestling world are full of shit. And God, if only it were that simple, right? If only it was just like, oh, well, these people are just making shit up, clearly. Like, no. like in the world of video games, plans can change on a fucking dime, right? They're like, oh, hey, we were working on this and now we're not, or we were working on this and we have nothing, we're not going to announce it for another 3 years, whatever it ends up being. In the world of wrestling is literally like, and in some cases, it comes down to the whim of fucking one guy who goes like, oh, I don't really feel like doing that anymore. We're not going to do this storyline. We're going to change this. And here's the new run sheet for the show that's currently running right now. So we'll change all this. Get Seth Rollins out of the ring. And so that then goes back to people going like, this guy reported that this was going to happen and it didn't. He sucks. And you're like, yeah, maybe. Or maybe things are fucking like cards subject to change. Fucking plans change, pal. Goddamn. Like that's just the reality of those of video games and wrestling. Plans change. Things happen. Rumors are just rumors until they are announced. And so I think you have to kind of take that into account with all of this stuff and just go like, well, like if there was a person out there who was reporting rumors in video games or in wrestling, because they're the same thing, and they were never right, then eventually you go like, okay, yeah, this person's full of shit. They're just reporting garbage. This guy just gets drunk and posts angry shit on his Twitter all the time and is a weird fucking monster and fuck this guy. You'd be like, all right, this whole outlet is trash. But it's rarely that simple. You've got people who are definitely right about some stuff and are definitely plugged in to a certain degree, but they only know who they know. They only have the sources that they have. They don't have full insight into what Nintendo was working on, just as they don't have full insight into what AEW was working on at any given time. And so, obviously, there are going to be situations where they hear half of a thing, report the half that they heard because they've verified it or they got a second source that backed it up, or ideally, I mean, that's not always the case, I suspect, in the world of wrestling, but what are you going to do? And they're reporting the best information they have at the time. But again, that's all they can do. It's not a guarantee from a Dave Meltzer or a Jeff Grubb that, yes, this is going to happen tomorrow. This is where they're announcing it. This is where it's going to happen. It's absolutely happening. It rarely can be that defined because these people only know who they know. And they don't have access to every single document. They don't have access to every single decision maker. Whether that's Tony Khan or Doug Bowser, it's all the same shit. They just do not have the full picture almost ever. And so they're reporting what they've heard, and usually that's plenty. Usually that's more than enough. When the PlayStation 4 Pro rumors were hitting really hard, that was a case of like, I had a couple of people that I could reach out to and try to verify like, hey, we saw these documents that are apparently these documents came off of Sony's dev portal. You have access to that. Can you tell me if those are there or not? And you can have a source go and look and in some cases, as I understand it, different developers have different access to different parts of the dev portal. And so even someone saying, no, those aren't there, isn't always fully true. Or it doesn't necessarily shoot holes in it, And so I've seen everything from different developers getting different versions of documents so that the leaks can be more easily traced. In events of like true information, they're not going to like seed false information with actual developers because that's not a good way to run a partnership. They're not going to go to some third party and be like, hey, you're working on a game for this. Here's all the details on it. And then go like, haha, they're all lies, but we need to figure out who's leaking stuff. Like they're not going to do that. Instead, it'll be like, oh, we put a different watermark on this one that we did on this one. And we can start to trace things that way. Like different developers get slightly different verbiage even. I've seen a lot of different stuff like that over the years. It's why you don't just run screenshots of that stuff. It's why you don't say like, here's screenshots of the dev portal that prove all this is true, because then that source is fucked. So yeah, you have to be careful to protect your sources in those sorts of situations. And wrestling is the same way, except it feels like it's even more gossipy because you have so many more moving parts, and the vast majority of those moving parts are independent contractors who kind of don't give a fuck and really have a motivated interest in pushing their own career at someone else's expense if necessary. And so I think the wrestling stuff ends up being like a little more vicious at times. But it's not that different. And so, I don't know. When I see people go like, Sean Ross Sapp's a piece of shit and he gets all these, making all this, I thought, why are we even listening to this fucking guy? And, you just look at it and go like, because he's got a track record of being right about a fair amount of stuff. He doesn't have a 100% track record of being right, but that's also the nature of this work. That's the nature of the reporting. No one's ever going to have a 100% track record on this because like someone's going to catch a cold and then that storyline changes. Like, this person was out sick. This person sprained their fucking ankle and now all this stuff that was written about last week is dead. Like that shit just fucking happens. And in video games, it's maybe not that turn on a dime, right? Because it's like, hey, Nintendo is making a 4K Switch or, whatever that bullshit was. That shit was probably rooted in some half truth, some amount of truth, at some point. But plans change, pal. Or someone didn't have the full story. Someone got what they thought was the story and started running with it, and then we're like, oh man, that's not what that was some conversations I had around the 4K Switch specifically. We're just like, this reporting out here is fucking horse shit. And, then people not getting into details about why it's horse shit. But, I don't know. That stuff's all weird. But that type of reporting is weird. The nature of that type of reporting is always very, hit or miss with that stuff. Especially when we're dealing with situations where it's like, okay, I heard from 3 people that this was happening, and then a plan changes. It's not as easy as like, well, I've got documents that say this, this, and this that you can look at. But even in those cases, those plans change sometimes. So do I think we'll see Wind Waker on Switch someday? I don't know. I don't know anymore. Like it's 2023. When do we get a new Switch? When is Nintendo's next hardware due? Is Zelda going to be the last big hurrah for that platform? And then the rest of the time on the Switch is spent kind of clearing out the backlog of things they've already announced, like Metroid Prime 4 and whatever else. I don't know. I'm sure that Nintendo is probably hard at work on what their next piece of hardware will be. They probably have a good idea already of the form factor, of the general targets they're looking to hit from a performance perspective, and that sort of stuff. Like, I'm sure that they're deep into it by now. Just timing wise, it would make sense. But what does that translate into? If we're sitting here 2023, is it something where we're looking at, so like Zelda, let's say, okay, Zelda comes out this year. We've got what? Metroid Prime 4, Advanced Wars has a release date. Metroid Prime 4 does not. Like, what are the Switch games that are currently floating out there that don't have dates? Yeah, Pikmin will come out at some point, theoretically. What do you just get those out the door and then everything else is for the next console? Maybe that might be a way to go. Do you a new Mario? Like, sure. Do you do a new Mario on? Oh, Pikmin 4 does have a date. Okay, so Pikmin 4 is July. Metroid Prime 4 is probably the last announced Switch game, at least. And that doesn't mean that they who knows? Like, maybe tomorrow they could announce a dozen more games, for all we know, right? Unlikely, but if we look at where things are right now in terms of games they have announced that they have said will get out the door on the Switch, it's Metroid Prime 4, and it's a handful of other things. As far as I know, I don't believe they've started talking to third parties about their next console in any serious way. Also, because I think if they had done that, we would have more concrete details on that by now. Some of that stuff would have probably leaked. So, you know, that's a 2025 release at that point, right? Like they're probably working on figuring out, like they probably, like I said, they probably have a good idea of what they want the console to be. They probably have a lot of engineering ahead of them to get it to the size they want it to be, the form factor, whatever else, to get that stuff done, to design it all, to lay it out. So maybe they get to a point sometime next year where they've got that stuff relatively locked down and they can start going to third parties and saying, hey, we're thinking, mid 2025, we're thinking holiday 25, we're thinking Q1 26 or something like that they end up filling that gap. That'd be pretty far off, but again, without knowing what other stuff they're developing to run on the Switch, it's hard to know what kind of ramp that thing has left. But I tend to look at it in terms of like, do third parties know what's going on? How much do third parties know about what's next? That's usually the bellwether. That's usually the first big sign. That was definitely the sign with the Switch. Because the first hard details I heard about the Switch did not come from Nintendo. It was like as third parties started getting more and more access to the hardware, as they started getting read in on, hey, here's what our plans are and whatever else. That was when that stuff started to solidify. And you go like, oh, okay, it's a handheld. Okay. Like I remember the first big question I had about the Switch was like, is there power? Is there any kind of processing power in the dock or not? That was the big thing that I wanted to know, that I initially couldn't get an answer on. In fact, I actually did have someone say like, I think there is, with the idea being like, because, like the details were like, oh, if you're docked, it can maybe run at a higher clock speed or whatever when it's docked and getting power and trying to power a 1080p screen or whatever instead of the native res of the Switch screen. That there was like, people didn't necessarily have all the details when I was trying to ask those questions about like, oh, is there something in the dock that makes it more powerful when it's docked, or is it like just in the thing? And I heard conflicting things, even from people who had like touched a fucking dev kit or whatever. They were still just like, I guess I don't know, or I think one person said like, I think there is. And the other person said, no, there's not. And it ended up being, no, there's not. But, that sort of stuff happens. So you're just like, hey, people only know what they know. People only have the sources that they have, and no one's perfect with that stuff. So when it comes to people who have established track records in the department of reporting on rumors and unannounced details and stuff like that, I think you have to give them a bit of a wide berth. I mean, certainly take them to task if you feel like they're being reckless in their reporting. That's not to say they get a free pass on everything, but like some of that stuff is, they're reporting with the best information they have at the time, and then shit changes. But also in video games, especially, I guess wrestling actually has a fair amount of this as well, but in video games, especially, you have people who pretend like they know everything. And, you have a lot of people that are like, I'm a leaker, and I'm the eavesdropper is here. There's going to be a cowboy in Street Fighter, like all that fucking stupid shit. And you've got people that are like, for whatever reason, just having fun lying to people, which I've done. That's fun. I made that fake E3 list years ago. That was like, it was designed to look like, hey, here are the press releases we're putting in the press room at E3 this year, which is not a thing that people do anymore and did not do then, but no one would know that. And I remember I wrote it up, I printed it out. It just was a list of a bunch of fucking fake game names along with some real game names. And in some cases was like, oh, here's like, there are some things I know are getting announced. And I'm, one of these things is a reference to that without breaking an embargo. And wrote up a bunch of fucking fake game names and then printed it out, took a photo of the printout, and then posted that to Twitter. And I posted it and said, I've told this story before, I'm sorry. And I posted it saying, look at this fake list of games I made. Like, there was no point that I was like, here's this thing. But that was enough for someone else to take it, take the image, post it somewhere else, free from the context of me saying, here's this thing I made that's full of bullshit. And immediately fucking, it got away from me and people were, treating it as if it was fact. Some people are just very, I don't know, gullible is maybe the word, but like, people believe because they want to believe, right? They want to believe that, oh, this sequel is coming and this is Nintendo is, I can't believe they're finally announcing this sequel to this thing that I've been wanting for years and years and years. Did anyone contact me about it? No, they don't care. Or they probably don't care. So, it's that stuff is very easy, especially these days when you've just got like numerous Discord servers and subreddits and there's message boards. There's like 30 different ways to go post some fucking bullshit. And yeah, I don't know. It's silly. Last question. Michael writes in and says, in your opinion, did the PlayStation 4 Pro and whatever Xbox called theirs have any meaningful impact? It always felt like a bit of a cash grab and don't think it had any bearing on what Sony or Microsoft did with their current gen consoles. I was okay owning a PlayStation 4 Pro and an Xbox One X because they were better and the experiences on the base consoles were getting worse. Over time, I think the meaningful impact it had was like the versions of games built on the original, built to run on the original versions of the consoles started looking worse and worse. Yeah, Control ran good on a Pro PS4. But yeah, you go back to a base level Xbox One and look at how some of those games run. Look at how games that came out near the end of that generation run on a base Xbox One. It's bad. You could argue that that's a negative, right? That them allowing developers to largely target the upgraded version of the console left millions of players behind. Left millions of players stuck with a subpar version of the game. And that sucks. And it created a situation where like, they're trying to get the games. I remember talking to developers and stuff before the PS4 Pro had been announced and talking to them about some of the rendering techniques because remember, those were targeted at 4K. Those were, the idea there was like, we've got to get games running at 4K because all of these 4K TVs, we've got to, people are desperate for content for their 4K TV. We need 4K video games. And I would argue that here we are years later, we still don't fucking need 4K video games. 1440p video games. That's where it's at. That's that sweet spot, baby. That's where the magic happens. And so, but like the performance that you have to hit to run at a great frame rate and run at 4K, like it's why consoles still have performance mode versus quality mode, is because they're like, shit, we gotta make this run at fucking 4K. This sucks. And so you had like the checkerboard technique that the PlayStation used to try to try to get games running at 4K without having to natively render them that way. And, just the weird hoops that developers were jumping through to try to make things happen and try to be performant at 4K on a PS4 Pro. it's stupid. It was a big diversion, and whatever. Like, games look better and they ran better on a Pro than they did on the base level console. And so I can't necessarily look at it as a total failure. It was probably very key for VR as well. Like, it was probably helpful for the PlayStation VR to have that extra power. But frustrating. And I think it's frustrating in retrospect. At the time, it was just like this weird, like, okay, I'm not really sure how to feel about this because we've never really been through this before. And is this going to split the user base the same way the 32X did? Is this a Sega CD situation? Like, what, are they fucking up here? And it seems like, no, they weren't. But I don't want to do it again. A big part of the reason why those consoles came out and why they made sense was because the CPUs in the initial PS4 and the initial Xbox One were not great. They kind of limped into this generation with hardware that already felt a little underpowered compared to where the PC was at. When the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X came out, it didn't feel that way. It felt like these were the boxes that they should have made all along. I know that's impossible. Like, but it felt like they're hitting the right performance for a relatively right price. Those consoles are fucking expensive. They're still expensive. But it's just a better bang for the buck. It feels like you're getting something powerful. Whereas the PlayStation 4 at launch kind of didn't feel that way even then. And so when we start hearing some of these rumors, some of these reports about the idea of a PlayStation 5 Pro, I don't feel good. My stomach, I don't like that, makes my body feel bad when we start having those conversations again, because that felt like a very useful temporary solution to a situation caused by underpowered hardware. But now here we are, like, they spec'd better, they just the thermals, whatever, they put together better boxes this time around. This shouldn't be the norm. If this is the norm, then generations really need to vanish completely, and backwards compatibility needs to be this endless thing, and they just need to say, this is the PlayStation fucking 2024. And here's the PlayStation 2026. Or every 2 years, put out a new PlayStation. Like they were iPhones, just fucking once a year, here's another upgrade. Once every 5 years, here's an upgrade. Just buy the latest one and let developers figure it out. And just go like, okay, you need to support the last 5 years of when you put a game out, you need to support everything from the current console back 4 years. And that's again, this is a terrible situation that I'm talking about here. But I don't know, like, I really think the idea of half-step consoles at this point is, like, fucked. Unless they've got some big selling point that I'm not thinking of, that when they say, here it is, and you're like, oh, shit, okay, great. Okay, maybe that does make sense. At the time, the story they were telling with the PlayStation 4 Pro at least sort of made sense. But again, it felt like they were just like chasing after 4K at a time when they didn't need to be. But it was really just a case of like, hey, these consoles are underpowered and we need to figure that out. And so I don't know what the solution is there. I don't like the idea of half-step consoles being a fixture. I don't like the idea of us doing it all over again for a variety of reasons. I think it just betrays the value proposition of a console. And so I guess that's why I would say, if you're going to betray the value proposition of a console, just fucking go all out with it. Put out one a year. Fuck it. You've broken it already. And none of that feels good. None of that feels good to me. So I don't really know. I don't know. The whole idea of a console was that it was supposed to be kind of a no-brainer sort of purchase, right? That you buy it and you just know, like, I buy one of these every 5 years and I'm good. 7 years, if we're lucky, right? The generation lasts longer and your purchase lasts longer and everything. But yeah, the whole proposition of the console was supposed to be not having to worry about upgrades the way you do on PC. It's supposed to be an easy bar of entry. You're supposed to be able to buy it and go like, these games run on this console and they look great. And you are done thinking about it. You never have to think about it again. But we've already betrayed that because now we have settings in games where you go like, oh, do you want performance mode or quality mode? We've got the potential threat of another round of half-step consoles that kind of change that conversation again and leave existing, there are people buying PlayStation 5s today that are just like, man, I finally was able to find one in a store and I finally saved up enough money to buy one for $500 frickin' dollars. And so if they come along next year and say the new PlayStation 5 Pro, when we consider the long-term shortage of the PlayStation 5, I think that's a fucking abysmal situation to be in. So I don't know. I worry about that stuff. It's not like an existential fucking threat, right? I'm not saying I worry about it in the sense of like consoles are done, it's nothing that simple. It's a situation where like there are going to be a certain cluster of consumers who are going to be fucked because they're out there buying a PlayStation 5 right now. And whatever. That's always the case with technology. You could make that argument and just say like, oh, well, that's, everything's always obsolete the next year or whatever. And I guess that's why I say, fuck it. If you're going to break it, and just sell a new one every year. And this one's got more hard drive space. This one's got a dynamic island on the controller, whatever the fuck you're doing. I'll be curious to see what the next round of video cards look like and when they hit. When NVIDIA decides to push forward. Realistically, can they? Is there a forward to push yet? Doesn't seem like it. But I thought I saw some reporting earlier this week that was like, yeah, NVIDIA is not in any rush to fucking get out replacements for the 4090s. Like this might last a little bit longer or something, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But I don't know, man. Everything's just fucking weird now. Like whether it was you can point at the pandemic for a lot of it, of kind of just disrupting so many different aspects of supply chains and whatever else, that it's sometimes it's hard to point out like what the fuck broke and did it get fixed and is it fixed the right way or are we still behind? Is everyone still catching up? It's like you look at stuff like Redfall and you're like, is that because the pandemic fucked up some early aspect of development and threw their timeline off? Like I don't even know. I had to get if you remember, there was a lot of water damage here in the house from a leaking my furnace was leaking from the air conditioner. And a lot of water seeped onto the wall and destroyed a part of carpet over here and destroyed the baseboards around my wall. Like these low, they're like white painted little, it's like some fucking custom piece of fucking whatever, wood. And there was a lot of wood there that was just destroyed and it had to come off. That was like a year ago or something now. Coming up on a year ago. We couldn't find like whatever brand or whatever item number it is for the baseboard. It was just gone. And at the time, the companies that supply that stuff to contractors and whatever else were like, oh yeah, well, supply chain issue and it's, we don't have it in stock. It's impossible to find anywhere. It's just fucking gone. Over the weekend, we finally got our hands on some, like almost, like 9 months later or something. And the guy that I had in doing the work that did the work initially came back to put more of it in. He's almost done. He's not done in this room, but the room out there where a lot more of it was destroyed, all that's kind of painted and hammered in, and it looks right again. And he called around and found some, and he went down to buy it so he could come back and paint it and install it. And he said, what the fuck happened? This stuff was just gone for 7 months or whatever. What the fuck? Did the company just have trouble making it or whatever? And the guy was like, no, man, this shit has been sitting on a cargo ship in the LA harbor for months because the docks were closed and the docks weren't working at full capacity to unload the fucking shipping containers because no one was going to work because fucking COVID. And, and so you just like, oh, right. Yeah. Like the stuff was sitting here in town, but it couldn't get to the distributors. It couldn't get further down the supply chain because there was no one that could unload it from the containers. And so, that's the sort of stuff that's going to impact everything, right? From GPU availability to, hey, we need parts to build switches. We need parts that, everything there is still kind of broken. So I just look at that and go like, oh, right. Yeah. Like it's very easy to just like, when we talk about the pandemic impacting game development, it is usually done in this very hand wavy, ephemeral way where you're just like, well, yeah, I don't know. Working from home is crazy, but there's a lot of like real logistical stuff that just broke, and all of it's, some of it will never be the same. Some of it is coming back together in new ways that people then have to figure out, and new ways of working, new ways of developing, new ways of everything. So, remote work, whatever you want to call it. And there's probably, by that same token, there's probably still a lot of shipping containers that haven't been unpacked yet. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a very long-winded way of saying everything's still fucked. But, we will find new ways of doing things and stuff will move forward. But yeah, everyone building anything had to get something in a container and get that container unpacked and get those packages shipped to them, whether it was building GPUs or building PlayStation 5s or yes, building FPGAs or, whatever you're working on. That stuff had to move around from place to place, and that stuff's fucked. So I don't know, man. That's probably, a big part of why you couldn't find a PlayStation 5 until relatively recently. That's going to do it for the show here. Sorry for talking so much. Next week, 3 hours of silence. We'll just knowingly stare at each other, and we'll just like, yeah. Yeah. You stare at your car speakers, I'll stare at this microphone, and it'll all work out in the end. Yeah, so let's see. Should be with you on Wednesday and Friday. Might be a little late. I got some family's got some doctor appointments. Like I said, everyone's been some type of sick here and there. So yeah. And we'll play some I don't know, I want to check out some Minecraft Legends. Dead Island is out on Friday. Maybe we'll take a look at that. I'll play some Mr. Sun's Hatbox, which is worth taking a look. Go look at the Steam page for Mr. Sun's Hatbox. It's it doesn't necessarily convey the crazy kind of Metal Gear-esque hijinks going on there. Yeah, maybe Friday morning we will watch it. Maybe we will we'll run back the Street Fighter 6 stream hosted by Lil Wayne on Friday morning or something, because that seems like it could be very weird. I don't know if they're going to have more news there or whatever, but yeah. Anyway, have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk soon.